call vote, or roll call. Richard Bursch present. Todd Dwyer?
Here.
Bob Pease is not. Katie Childs?
Here.
Carl Luck?
Here.
Jack Rabbit?
Here.
Ken Jones?
Here.
In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being audio-video recorded. The agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting, and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may be also brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. Do we have any public comments from the commission?
Yeah, I do. I attended the COLAP, the Coalition of Lakes and Ponds, Massachusetts COLAP, last weekend, last Friday, and it was very good. A very different format than usual, but much more interesting because it was focused on stormwater and cyanobacteria in our lakes and ponds. Yeah, it was nice to have it focused because it really was a common theme. One of the interesting things, all the presentations are in the process of getting uploaded to the COLAP website, so that it'll be available. But something that, what's your interest here? One of the interesting things was on the Charles River. They're doing a lot of work, and a professor from Northeastern is engaged and gave a good presentation. And they're setting up floating wetlands. That's the plan in the Charles River to help clean it up and even add some aesthetic value to it. So that was very interesting. Think Blue. Jack, the stormwater team know all about that. That's a stormwater coalition that Lunenburg belongs to, and they had a presentation, and picked up goodies for the commissioners here.
You got the ducks?
You got the rubber ducks, the Think Blue theme. Everybody gets one of these. It's a very interesting video they put together. They'll be rolling out on the website as soon as it's compatible with electronics. And these guys represent all of the pollution and things that are going on our lake. It's a very cute video. Everybody get one?
Yep.
So that's getting rolled out. It's very clever. It's, be green but think blue. There was also a very interesting presentation that had a distinct correlation. It might have been the Northeastern guy, between turbidity and cyanobacteria. Extremely well correlated in at least their study. So that was very interesting. And another interesting thing was Framingham did a with the Framingham Conservation was there, and they had a booth set up and gave a presentation. They have established a 125-foot buffer zone, and I asked them about that, and they said that they, like us, have a bylaw in addition to the Wetland Protection Act. So it's in the bylaw that there's 125-foot. More than this than I do, but you could give the thing. But I thought that was very interesting. One of my missions about to finish accomplished now is finding a number of aquatic consulting firms that could do third-party peer review types of things. I've got 4 so far. They're doing a lot of good work in Worcester on that, and they're going to send me some names, and so we should have no trouble if we choose to do that, to find a number of companies to talk to. That was it. It was very good. And I'll give a link to Matt to send out to everybody when those presentations are up.
All right, thank you, Carl. Any other questions or comments from the commission, or public comments? Any public comments from the public?
Make sure this on the agenda this evening for the extension.
Oh, we do have draft order of conditions discussion. Okay. Moving forward with our first hearing pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 is amended, the Town of Lunenburg Wetlands Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a public hearing on a notice of intent submitted by Joseph O'Brien for the construction of a single-family home with garage within the buffer zone at 179 Island Road. The applicant has requested a continuance on this hearing.
That was due to the applicant issuing the wrong meeting date in his abutter notification. For some reason, he put the May 1st meeting.
Okay. So at this point, I'll accept the motion to continue.
So moved.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
And moving forward to our second pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, is amended in the Town of Lunenburg, Wetlands Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a public hearing on a request for determination by Carl Luck for the installation of an emergency generator in a trench to accommodate the conduit within the outer portion of the 100-foot buffer zone at 30 and 50 Sunset Lane. Describe to us what you're doing.
Yep. I have the copy for everyone. Okay, basically, so we're retired and want to be set free in the winter to travel. We're going to get a whole house generator installed so we can go away peacefully. What we're doing is, and where it's shown on the last page of this, is it actually slightly bridges 30 Sunset and 50 Sunset. The major work is a trench. You have to trench between the generator and where the gas tanks are. The gas tanks will be located where the current gas tanks are, next to the house. Yeah, okay. And so we're going to run about a 19, 20-foot, 2x2, 2 feet wide, 2 foot deep trench, about 19, 20 feet over to the generator, which is just barely on 30 Sunset, which we also own. And that work, that's going to take about, they'll dig the trench the first day. They'll come in, the gas company will come in the next day, put the line in the ground, and the generator people will put the electric in the ground, and then by the third day, the trench should be filled. I will put wattles between the trench and the lake. It's 80 feet from the lake, but just to be sure nothing gets run down in case it rains. We'll put some wattles there. And I think that's about it.
What's the generator going to sit on?
Oh, good question. Yeah, in that little square there, it's basically landscape timber. It's very flat, so they don't have to do any leveling. So they just put a perimeter of landscape timber around the generator, which is like 2 by 4 foot generator. So it'll be about a foot outside of that, and then 3/4.
So it'll sit on a crushed stone pad?
It'll sit on a crushed stone pad. Yeah, that's all sitting on the ground. There's no digging there. There's no digging other than leveling at the tank, because we need one more tank put in. There was only one there to begin with. Now I need 2 for the generator. So they say some leveling at the tank, no digging or soil disturbance at the generator, but the trench from the generator to the tanks needs to be put in.
So the soil you'll take out, so soil you'll put back?
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
And so there's 2 lines that run in the trench?
Yes.
One will be the gas, which will be professionally installed by propane company?
Yep.
Because they must have a certain direct burial.
Eastern's doing that, and they'll also line the bottom of where the gas line is with sand.
Okay.
Otherwise, it'll be all just the soil that came out, but in that one
And they
area
have
where
to
the line is.
put metal taping over it so it can be found later on if they have to.
Yep.
Although it's kind of obvious if it's 20 feet.
Yeah, so there's 2 contractors involved. We're not doing any of this work. The generator contractor will dig the trench and put the electro line in, and then the gas people will put the gas line in and connect up all the gas.
Okay. And you said it's pretty flat. What are the
Yeah, it's very-
conditions? Is it just grass there now? Any trees?
No, it's just gravel. It's just natural
Okay.
packed gravel.
So you look 3 or 4 days in, out, done?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Then you've already contracted, so
Yes.
this will be after permit within the next 4 to 6 weeks?
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right. That sounds pretty straightforward. Any questions from the commission?
Just a question, Carl.
Yeah.
In terms of, the unit's going to vibrate, right?
What you?
Well, you're running your generator. There will be some vibration. You're sitting in a crushed rock. Whatever the contact points are, you're eventually going to work it into the soil. Would you, better off just putting it on a pad?
This is their normal.
Is that how they're doing it?
Yeah, no, this is their, whether there's a pad under, a small pad under the generator or under the feet, I don't know what the bottom of the generator looks like.
Yeah.
It may be a continuous service, I don't know. This is their standard, crushed rock
I would just watch it,
implementation.
because you'll sink it, and otherwise you will with a long-term vibration, you will dig a hole if they're sitting on a little.
That much, I mean, eventually it'll fill up with fines if you really do vibrate that much.
Yeah.
And then you'll get some, not all.
I would think I would hope they address this because they've got a
Oh, yeah.
very long warranty on this thing.
Yeah, you'd want to distribute it as much as you could, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
just,
good point. We'll take a picture
Well,
and cross it.
I'm assuming that I mean, they're putting it on timber, so I'm assuming that the timbers are distributed in such a way to spread the vibration energy around.
Well, it sounds like the timbers.
The
just holding the rock.
Right, they're holding the rock in, but I'm assuming that it would be put in such a way that everything would be distributed.
I wouldn't worry about it.
No,
if Carl's not.
because if
I
the
can
lights
give you-
don't, if the lights don't go on at Carl's house.
Yeah.
it's not gonna affect any of us, so-
Yeah, yeah. If I can give you a call, when they're installing it, if you want to come take a look.
Just one comment is the wattles here don't appear to extend all the way along the trench.
A little more X's, yeah.
Just, when you're out there, just make sure that they extend all the way. I know you were trying to not get into your, blinds and stuff that you need, but, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the house, it's like two hard stops, the house on one side and there's a
Yeah.
stockade fence on the other. So it'll come right up to both of those.
Okay.
My little X's, short
So
little
the
X.
stockade fence is just past the generator on 30?
Yeah, that line between the properties is a stockade fence.
And I assume you're the owner of
It is.
both properties?
Yes, I am.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from commission? Any questions from the public on 30 and 50 Sunset Lane? Yes, name and address?
Joanne, Water, 362 Sunset Lane.
Yep.
Would you be able to hook up anything else to the generator, like sub pumps, or those pumps, or I don't know what you call them, the pump water, or like people have been going on their jobs in the winter so it doesn't freeze? I know this winter a lot of residents have set up generators, and they have pumps going around the legs of their dock so the dock doesn't freeze.
He said this is a whole house generator, so anything you could power in the house would be powered by the generator.
Exactly.
I don't know if
So,
that makes
with the the house ones, can I like go and plug outside things into this, or is it all wired to the house?
It's hardwired to the house, but everything in the house is powered by this. It's sized to support everything in the house.
So if you already had some outside outlets, it would power those.
Right. But via the house, not directly to the generator. I don't believe there's any plugs to plug directly into the generator.
They usually is.
All right. Any other questions for 30 and 50 Sunset? All right, seeing none, I'll accept the motion for a -3 determination.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. All right, moving forward, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended, the Town of Lunenburg Wetland Protections and Municipal Bylaws, a public hearing on a request for determination by Melissa Rabato for the extension of a dock at 33 Birch Island Way. Is anybody here for 33 Birch Island Way?
She said she probably was going to be here, but I knew she was traveling.
Okay, well, at this point, I'll accept the motion to continue until later in the
May 1st.
meeting.
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
What was the motion for?
To continue until later in the meeting. And actually, we have to go back to the first hearing for 179 Island Road. You said they asked for continuance to May 1st, so we will need a motion to continue that until May 1st.
So moved.
We have a motion,
Second?
we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that was just to May 1st. The first hearing, I neglected to add a date certain for the continuation. All right, at this point, we will jump forward to the Ford Stewardship Plan, Bird Habitat Planning for 123 Hollis Road Conservation Area. And with us tonight, we have Gary Goldrup of New England Forestry to present the plan, and Jeff Ritterson from the Mass Audubon, who worked with Gary on the plan to just develop. If you'd like to come up, gentlemen, and just kind of read us.
Sit at a mic.
Yep.
Good evening. Again, this is Jeff Redison. I've been working with Jeff on 5 or 6 forest stewardship bird plans. Unlike the other 5 forest stewardship plans that we prepared for the other Lunenburg properties, this one was specifically designed with creating habitat or maintaining habitat for birds. And I believe most everybody was at the site walk the other day. And I'll just briefly go over some of the highlights of the plan. Basically, we had 2 specific forest management practices that would enhance the habitat for birds. Specifically, the patch cuts, creating young forest habitat in a mature woodland, adjacent to already existing openings, being the power line and the abandoned field. And then the other one was just the standard thinning for creating gaps in the overstory canopy. So those were the primary forestry practices that would be enhancing habitat for birds. But specifically tonight, I would just like to turn it over to Jeffrey, who basically takes a look at the properties with me. He walked the property prior to us writing the plan, made many recommendations. We got together on individual birds that would potentially benefit, and he's been a great resource for us as foresters and landowners in creating the special habitat for birds. And I'd like to kind of turn it over to Jeffrey to just give us an overview of his role working with private landowners, municipalities, and the cooperation with Department of Conservation and Recreation. Jeffrey.
Sure, yeah. Jeff Redison with Mass Audubon. My title there is Field Ornithologist, where, excuse me, a lot of my time is spent working with a program called the Foresters for the Birds program, which is coordinated by Mass Audubon in partnership with the Department of Conservation and Recreation and the Mass Woodlands Institute. In a nutshell, what the program does is train consulting foresters like Gary in bird habitat, how to assess the habitat, what the current conditions are in a property, and make recommendations for any sort of enhancement of that habitat for certain types of bird species of conservation need. We then link the consulting forester up with private landowners who are interested in doing this, with towns and land trusts, to get the conservation work done on the ground. Just briefly looking at the needs of our forest birds, conservation-wise, you can sort of group them into 2 separate types of birds. Those that like young, regenerating forest, early successional is a term for that, who are really in sharp decline. That's largely due to habitat loss as our forests have regrown over time. So that's a disturbance-dependent habitat type. You need some sort of disturbance to the forest canopy. And as it turns out, forestry practices is one way to create that habitat type. The second group would be birds that nest within more closed canopy, more mature forests. Some of them, many of them remain fairly common. Others are, in fact, declining, which can in part be attributed to habitat quality. So sure, you still have plenty of closed canopy forests, but it's lacking a lot of the structural complexity that an old growth forest would have, that we used to have on our landscape before most of our forests were cleared. So I'm talking about things like an understory, where birds like to nest down low, patches of a midstory, say 5 to 30 feet, where other birds like to nest, coarse woody debris on the ground, cavity trees, snags and things, all features of high quality bird habitat that tend to be lacking in many of our middle-aged, more homogeneous forests, as is the case on this property in question. So I've worked with Gary a bunch over the past few years on, as he mentioned, on several different plans, and I think he writes great plans, and I've looked at this plan and it seems like I would endorse it.
So, from a ornithologist, or actually, if Jeff, if you just give us a quick update on, not an update, but how you became an ornithologist, or what your expertise and experience would be?
Sure. Let's see. How far back did we go? Typical story. Grew up outdoors, playing outdoors. Went to school, had to major in something. I grew up in Delaware. Went to the University of Delaware for undergrad. Got a degree in wildlife conservation. As is typical, I did about 4 years bouncing around doing seasonal work, technician work, sort of building up my field skills. Before going to grad school at UMass Amherst, where I actually specialized in like tropical ecology, but during the summers, outside of my field season, I would do also field work and help with other research projects related to forest birds in Massachusetts, forestry, habitat management, while I attained my master's in wildlife conservation again. And landed this job at Mass Audubon.
Okay. I guess just to delve into the plan a little bit, I know you had recommended a couple patch cuts in 2 different areas on the property, and how would that benefit the property in the bird habitat area? I know we had one, we did the walk, and I'm not sure, I see a lot of familiar faces. And we had walked down towards the power lines. And doing a cut in that area, and what birds would be benefiting from something like that?
So that would be like the young forest bird suite that I described before. So specific species would be like chestnut-sided warbler, brown thrasher, eastern towhee, indigo bunting. There's a whole suite, about probably 30 within New England, 40 within New England. That were identified by one study that I have in mind, 30 of which are in really sharp decline, largely due to habitat going missing. So just simply creating that habitat really is a story of if you create it, they will come. At least some of those species will come, and it's a group that's dire need of creating this habitat type.
Yeah. All right. When you were out, you did walk the site with Gary, correct?
I did.
Did you notice any of the rare birds that we're trying to attract in this program?
I did not, only because it's a bit early in the year.
Okay.
A lot of what we do look at is the structure and the age of the forest, and that gives us really solid information to make really good educated guesses as to what would be there and what will show up. And as I mentioned before, if you build this habitat type with these group selections, guaranteed that some species that are in need of this habitat type will appear.
Okay. And how does a patch cut differ from the way that the power company is maintaining that utility easement? It looks like they go through every couple of years and cut everything just down to the ground and go back up.
Sure.
What kind of maintenance would we need on a patch cut area to continue to provide habitat for those early succession birds?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess the early successional habitat is really defined as like really open canopy conditions with the shrubby growth, thick density of stems down low, which you can find in the power line right of way. That power line right of way, as I recall, is quite narrow. Many of these birds are area sensitive, so they need larger areas of habitat to really find it usable. So building off of that power line right of way is advantageous. It's also a matter of, so some species like it, they're young forest, like different ages of young forest, if I may. So some 0 to 3 years old, some like it 5 to 7 years old, upwards until about 15, 20 years of regeneration, after which it's beyond the point that's usable for these birds. It's matured too far. So the power line company mowing it down every, say, 3 years or so, it's providing some of that habitat, but not long-term, not for the whole range of species that could benefit from older young forest. Okay. Maintaining it over time, I mean, there's various techniques of doing that. One way to do it would not to maintain that particular patch, but have it sort of rotate in a mosaic around the property or on other properties, or you could brush hog it every 3 years. I mean, this is also why I'm teamed up with a forester, because they're sort of experts in the architecture of habitat, of creating the structure and things like that.
Okay. But as far as you're concerned, just the right-of-way itself isn't large enough to help in those early succession bird habitat?
No, sir. It could be greatly improved, put it that way, by building off of that and creating more habitat.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Then there was one other one up by the field behind the house. Mm-hmm. You're recommending a small, what was it, 1.5 acre around the field.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. No. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of I guess the state and other people put forth, other researchers as well as Mass Audubon, suggest having about 10% of existing forest in a landscape in some sort of young forest condition. Mm-hmm. So that would help, by creating more than one patch, would help sort of achieve the overall landscape goals of having roughly 10% of the forested portion of the landscape in young forest. That can vary by how much forest is on the landscape, you know, it depends, it's all unique situations, I guess, but I think it would be beneficial to create a second patch. It's close to the other one, so you can have sort of birds moving back and forth, and they sort of view the landscape in that way as
Okay. So the 50-acre piece is more than large enough to sustain the two patches, because it looks like we have them kind of separated out, the two ends of the property. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, and part of the benefit of having it kind of on the edges versus smack in the middle is that you're not really disturbing the interior forest habitat as much, so it's nice to have them kind of on the edge.
Okay. And kind of use the right-of-way in the first one.
Yeah, sort of leveraging what is already there to
Okay.
really get a bang for your buck.
Okay. And then as we did some of the management practices that were recommended in the interior, how would you foresee those being left for the different types of birds that we're not attracting in the early succession? So if we have the canopy in the middle and do 20, I think it was a 25 to 33% recommended cut, is there certain types of trees in there that you'd recommend leaving and certain other types you'd see? Because it seems like it's, at least from the overhead, it's kind of a monoculture deciduous hardwood forest in through there.
Sure.
And I know when we were out there, Gary had talked about putting some blowdowns in there and leaving some tops and snag and things like that.
Right. So maybe I'm hearing two sort of different questions. One being, I would answer in that a lot of these practices Gary's recommending would be to sort of enhance the structural complexities, getting the sunlight to the forest floor, getting some regeneration going so that birds have somewhere to nest at that 0 to 5 foot level, which I call the understory, and in the mid-story as well, 5 to 30 feet. And having that complexity with the debris on the ground. In terms of species composition of trees, you know, various species will benefit depending on what exists. Some like it to be more purely hardwoods, but having a mix of hardwoods is better than a monoculture. Some like it a mix, so hardwoods and softwoods are fine. Some are more geared towards softwood dominated forests. So it's nice to have sort of a mix on the property. I think the majority of it is like hardwood mix with some pine.
Oak hardwood,
Yeah, oak hardwood, so,
small section of scattered pine.
yeah.
So you would see if we did some other maintenance in different areas, you know, trying to promote more diversity, taking a certain type of tree out of one area and a different type out of another, just to get some better patching in there of different stands, different types of, different varieties.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend improving the structure.
Okay.
And having a diversity of tree species.
Okay. Matt, you had a
Well, that
question?
just leads me to my question.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about the overstory and the basically elimination of a monoculture for a more biodiverse structure. The understory comes to mind.
Yeah.
And I know we on site had discussed the value of the understory with respect to whatever little shrub layer is actually there, for example, the witch hazel versus the mountain laurel. What would be the value of the understory as far as this cut and this habitat establishment goes?
For birds?
Was discussed, yeah, to the birds, yeah.
So,
I mean, you had brought that up on site.
Yeah.
Specifically, you had noted the witch hazel.
Yes.
right. So, I guess certain particular species of plants aren't as important as having that structure. So whether it's witch hazel or mountain laurel or musclewood, any sort of understory tree, or whether it's saplings of, canopy tree species, just having pockets of relatively dense undergrowth would provide the structure needed for various bird species that nest down low. Now, if you're able to retain during forestry operations some of the mountain laurel, some of the witch hazel, that's something that's some structure that's already in place. So a lot of like the mid-story especially takes time to develop. Everything takes, we're talking in forest years here. So you'll see changes over time that'll benefit various species. Some birds will cue in on mountain laurel, like black-throated blue warbler tends to nest somewhat preferentially in mountain laurel, but it's not like totally dependent on it. Did I answer your question?
Yes, it does, actually.
Yeah, okay.
The only other question I have is, can you say black-throated blue warbler 5 times fast?
No, I can barely say it once.
In the stewardship plan, you had a couple phrases here. What is a snag tree?
Oh, it's a standing dead tree, essentially.
Okay.
Often it'll have cavities in it, which is important for various bird species, everywhere from chickadee, tufted titmouse, various owls, woodpeckers will nest in those. It's also sort of decomposing, so providing insects, other arthropods for foraging on.
Okay, all right. So, and you said the word cavity tree, so you did have some recommendations on how many per acre of snag trees, cavity trees. You had a recommendation of coarse woody debris.
Yep.
Which is just brush.
It's, I suppose, it's often broken down into fine woody debris, which is like the tops of trees, sort of smaller sticks, like brush piles, and then the coarse stuff, which can be defined in many different ways, but it's often somewhere around, 5 to 10 or greater diameter and of a certain length. That again, it's decomposing. Ruffed grouse will use it to display on in many instances. It's providing that complexity that helps to really improve the habitat quality.
Okay, and it's a fair amount. You listed here 2 quarts per acre, coarse woody debris to be left, and then some fine woody debris.
Yes, sir. That's a target. Yep.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Jones.
you've done this, I don't know how many times you've helped with these programs, but what kind of success have you seen, sort of, maybe not scientifically, but anecdotally?
Good question. Let's see. So as I stated earlier, it sort of takes time to see results. So I've been to other properties that have implemented similar practices that I wasn't necessarily involved in, but would be good sort of correlates.
Sure.
And in terms of the young forest, yeah, there's just, it really is a case of habitat quantity. It's not on the landscape. So if you do build it, as I mentioned, you do see it's often packed with these young forest birds. So they're not rare because they can't find good habitat. It's just not on the landscape. And I've been anecdotally, yes, I've seen forestry work done in the more closed canopy situations that is getting loaded with birds like wood thrush, veery, birds that like that sort of mid-story and understory. And all the recommendations through the program is based in, peer-reviewed scientific literature that's been conducted over 20, 30 years or more.
Just a quick question, Gary. What we did over in Small Town Forest, there's a lot of patch pieces taken out. That's sounding like it'd be conducive to the whole bird habitat as well. Especially in the parking lot area and things, so we kind of did that without really knowing that we were dramatically improving that area in terms of birds, is that?
Yeah, I think in my presentation Saturday, I tried to hit on that, is that basically the forestry that we've been conducting in my career for 25 years is consistent with good wildlife habitat. I think the benefit here is having an expert be able to confirm that forestry practices do provide that good habitat. And in this particular case, for species that are in decline or struggling and need that habitat. So I think it's that symbiotic relationship here that we have in terms of the practices that we've been doing for years. And I, for one, didn't know until this program came through what those species were for the most part. And I've learned a lot through the Foresters for the Birds program. So it's just a confirmation that what we do, what we practice, has been good wildlife management in our woodlands.
He's just nodding here, so it must be okay.
Yeah, I would say any sort of, sustainable forestry with the long-term goals in mind. There's all sorts of forestry practices. You can high grade and clear cut all over the place, but it might not necessarily be the best recommendations. But this, program really just adds, again, the confirmation and just some minor tweaks to regular sustainable forestry practices that Gary's been doing for years.
The field in front of, right behind the house, it's a pretty large field. Is the intent to continue to mow that? Continue to mow it, or are you going to let go fallow and grow, or what is?
That's up to us. I mean,
Yeah.
my position would be to try to mow it once a year, once every other
And
year, just to
maintain the full
keep the deciduous tree growth out of it, and just keep it as a unimproved field.
Yeah. Would that-
And then there's a patch cut recommended in around it that I think gives the early successional tree growth and shrubby growth that we're looking for, so.
I thought that particular area was extremely beneficial for woodcock. The singing ground in the open field, but then you got the dense early successional in transition next to it. Soft, moist soils for probing. I thought that was...
A late fall mowing?
Yeah.
Getting a chance to,
For pollinators as well, I would say.
Late fall is the best time for doing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And another question I did have, if we go forward, and this is a different discussion, with any of the timber management, do you recommend, or are you available to recommend certain times of the year we should be doing that? A question had come up about the bird habitat, birds that are already there.
Right.
We don't want to be in there interrupting the mating seasons of different birds.
Sure. So obviously all winter long is fine, and of course following, Chapter 131 or whatever, the general best management practices for soil and all that. But I would say just avoiding April, or really May through mid-August.
Okay.
Would be good.
Yeah, I know the first cut we had to do in the wintertime because of natural heritage, and it was in the zone of blanding turtles, I believe was up there. Is that
Right.
what we had up there?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so we had to do that in the wintertime, but that question had come up.
It was blanding a box, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, winter's generally one of the better times for that, soil stability.
Sure.
All right, any other questions from commissioners? I'll open it up to the public. Any members of the public have questions on the forward stewardship plan that we do have presented before us this evening? If you do have any questions, I just ask for your name and address.
Big time, 601 Road. My question was down a lot of what's going to be beneficial. What species are we losing?
Good question.
Just avian, plants, other plants. I know, for instance, that when they cut near my house for some houses, there was a laurel patch that got opened up and died. Because they took the tree down the house. So I think we have to look at the loss versus the gain before we proceed very far with this.
Well, I think we have the professional here to answer that question.
Sure. So I would just say that with every management action, there's going to be winners and losers. And that what we're trying to do here is sort of establish or establish habitats that are underrepresented on our landscape. So for example, we have a lot of edge forests, so the chickadees, the titmice, the blue jays that like to nest in yards, and the cardinals, all those are doing quite well. The species that are sharply declining are the ones that we're really trying to to benefit. So there will be, of course, a trade-off, but it's about sort of reintroducing a balance of habitat types on the landscape.
Like I said, I don't think anybody studied what's in there, what's going to be gone. Again, my other feeling on the logging part of it, which is participating, is that's almost impossible to do without severe damage. You know, that's the other thing I don't like.
What have you found on other projects that you have done where you've opened up habitat and canopy? Has there been noticeable loss of other species of birds?
Of forest birds, no. I mean, you really do start to benefit a lot of the underrepresented species without a really significant loss of other birds. And birds in general have been established as a really good indicator species, meaning that more or less what's good for birds is often good for a vast array of other wildlife. So we kind of use birds and birds management as an umbrella to do all-around good habitat management.
Okay. Any other questions from the public?
I have a question. Yeah, Margaret Tompkins, 601 Flatwood Road. Isn't it true that owls and woodpeckers, beneficial birds, they're like old trees? We're talking about new forest, new growth, and that's fine for certain species.
Right.
But owls like old trees, and they're beneficial birds.
They sure are a lot. So maybe what you're talking about is how many owls and woodpeckers will nest in cavities, and the cavity, a large enough cavity can only exist in larger trees, for example. And so what, for example, we'd probably be doing on this property is retaining a lot of those big, large trees that take, of course, a really long time to grow. And even some, I mean, Gary can probably talk more eloquently about this, but removing some trees may allow the remaining trees to grow even larger and retain that important habitat component.
Yeah, and there are targets in the plan that you've put in for the larger trees. So many, a minimum, so many per acre of the cavity trees and the large diameter trees.
That's correct.
So there is acknowledgement of keeping the larger trees intact on the property. So, and just to let everybody know, so this is a 60-acre parcel, and your recommendation or that from the Audubon Society or ornithologist is roughly a 10% early successional. And I believe the recommendation is only for 4 acres or so of patch cut. So that's still under the 10%. I imagine you must be including the right-of-way as part of the area for the open early successional habitat.
Sure, and some of that could also exist on other parcels, abutting parcels and things like that.
So that's stuff you took into consideration when you were viewing the plan a bit?
Yeah, it's about, I guess the unique characteristics of each property and how large a property is, and looking at the landscape as a whole and how that property can contribute to a landscape goal. So when I talk about landscape, it's generally we talk about everything within a mile radius, which is about 2,500 acres.
Okay.
And how this property can contribute to that.
All right. Any other questions from the public? Yes, name and address.
Then ma'am, 463 Birds. I'm just wondering, there's a pollinator garden that's nearby. And some of us have been wondering, like, how would the birds that are coming in sort of feast on the pollinator garden? Is it close enough for them, for that to be their buffet in the morning? Are you aware of the pollinator garden?
I am aware of the pollinator garden, and have put some thought into this, actually. Haven't been exposed to this question before. And I don't think that the birds would, I mean, sure, you would lose some pollinators, some of the larvae and whatnot. But I think it's something that pollinators have, of course, been dealing with for millennia and have sort of co-evolved to have some loss due to predation, while sort of playing their role within the overall ecosystem. I don't imagine anything you do on this property would really increase that predation of your larvae, and you'll certainly get birds from across the street and everywhere else coming in to eat at the butterfly garden, as well as within the field that you might mow every few years. That'll also support pollinators, as well as within the forest. I don't find it to be concerning personally.
So you don't think it would be threatened in any way?
I do not.
Do the birds help in, because I know they've planted a lot of natives in the pollinator area, do the birds help in dispersing the seeds and helping the diversity of the flora?
Sure, birds are important seed dispersers and pollinators in some cases. Yeah.
So there are some benefits to the pollinator garden with perhaps adding a few different, or more variety.
Sure, I would imagine, like the goldfinches and things would be spreading the echinacea seeds around, whatever you have.
Yeah, so it is kind of a symbiotic relationship anyways.
Sure, it's a component of an overall ecosystem, that interacts in important ways.
Should we consider taking part of that field and expanding the pollinator garden into that area? Would that be beneficial to the birds as well as to our pollinators? We'll probably lose something, so let's come back and create a bigger area that overwhelms any kind of loss we might have. Would that structurally change the...
Are you speaking of extending the pollinator garden into what's typically mowed, like weekly into the field?
No, the one that we would do basically right behind the house once a year.
I almost view that as a natural sort of pollinator habitat.
The milkweed comes into that field naturally.
Does it?
And milkweed, Joe Pieweed, you name it, all sorts of stuff.
The more you mow it, the more the milkweed is gonna take over and spread and stuff like that. So
Okay.
I think it's...
Echinacea and things like that?
I don't know that would become established. I'm not sure. But all those sort of naturally, colonizing weeds and things provide good pollinator habitat as well.
All right, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Lewis.
Mr. Kurt, this is well understood and the science is good and solid. But it seems like one of the things that we're doing this to really try and improve the wildlife habitat. So we've got a little different focus here than logging or anything else. But it seems like we probably don't have a lot of data on what birds are there, and therefore we really won't have the ability to see if we've been successful or not and what we've done. So I'm wondering if there's some way, and I can't believe it's easy to do, but how would you go about, establishing it? We're not going to do this tomorrow, so we have some time to establish a baseline of what birds are there and what birds are missing, and then as the years go by, be able to track and see if we have improved things or not. Is anyone doing that kind of thing, or is it just...
Sure, yeah. That's typically a good practice on any habitat management project, is to collect your pre-treatment data and then compare that to post-treatment, which is what a lot of these studies that this is all routed in do. It's what I'm working on in one of our sanctuaries where we're implementing a lot of this work. So it's important. Let's see, dealing with this property in particular, how could you possibly do that? We could look at surrounding areas of what has been reported. Like there's important, like eBird is a really great tool. If you're familiar with, it's sort of an online repository that birders, so you have this great, really highly skilled group of people that are great at observing birds. You kind of turn them or harness them as citizen scientists to collect the data, and they report that online, so you can sort of see what's been reported in the area, or what has, perhaps the property has been birded, and folks have reported their observations there. Would be a good way to sort of understand what's there. Is that a rigorous systematic survey and comprehensive of what's there? No, but it's a good starting point to see what...
Is there a way to encourage that? If there's just people out there, is there a way to encourage them to look at this property?
You're being recruited, sir. You guys as a conservation commission could, whether you have a Facebook page or whatnot, sort of put the call out for folks to come enjoy the property and submit their observations, or even send you a list, or, I'm sure there's birders in Lunenburg.
Chairman,
Yes. Just your name and address, sir.
John Jones, Valley Road in Lunenburg. I go in there frequently. I'm a goofy photographer.
Sure.
And I have a ton of documentation of birds, particularly in the habitat area.
Excellent.
So I can share that.
Oh, good.
And I would be happy to spend more time there.
Yeah.
The more time I can stay out of the house.
Hey, problem solved. Done deal.
On TV.
All right, good question, though. Question of a true researcher.
Yeah.
All right, so at this point, any other questions from the public? Any questions from the commission? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion to approve the forest stewardship plan for Hollis Road Conservation Area.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And the only thing I think we have to get to you is the goals.
Yep.
Yep. I don't know if everybody's got their goal sheet tonight. If not, Matt can photocopy them off and we'll get them to you.
Actually, I think you should be, everybody, if they want in the cloud, you should be able to, it's in the actual plan. The sheet, the goal sheet. It's in the actual plan.
Right.
So you guys can pop it off the actual plan.
Okay.
It's blank, I believe.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah, so there's a goal sheet that just, our different goals as a commission for the property itself.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Luck.
So just for clarity for the public, this approving the plan, basically, we like the plan, but then there's a whole implementation of the plan phase. Maybe just outline where we are. I mean, approving the plan doesn't mean we go start.
Yes, so the plan was developed by the professionals and a recommendation, a 10-year recommendation of forestry practices on the property.
Correct.
So at this
your
point,
discretion.
we have reviewed the plan, we've walked it with the public, we have accepted your product and recommendations. We haven't accepted or made any plans to implement those stages at this point. Correct. But it's just the plan, the workmanship itself is what we're accepting. And the plan is paid for by DCR, Division of Conservation Resources.
Forest Stewardship Program.
Yep,
Yes.
under the Forest Stewardship Program and what's it, Forestry for the Birds?
Yep.
Program.
Yeah.
So, yep, because there is an additional cost
Correct.
of the plan to have Mass Audubon involved in it, so, and that whole cost is picked up by DCR.
That it is.
Okay, so we just have to get the plan signed and presented so that we can get our grant money and pay these nice gentlemen for their work.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right,
Excellent.
all right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the public before we move on? Okay, thank you all for being here.
Thank you very much.
I did see some new people come in. Did anybody come in for 33 Birch Island Way? Okay. Moving forward, we have enforcements, 4 Townsend Harbor Road. Matt, what do we have on 4 Townsend Harbor Road? Thank you, gentlemen.
That was the, let's see here.
Have a good night.
That was the gentleman that was, from the last meeting, that was rebuilding the house. He's supposed to file a notice of intent. I haven't heard from his engineer yet.
Okay.
He did say at the last meeting, I'd hear from him within a couple of weeks, so I'm just waiting for this week to go by before I start poking him again.
Okay. 63 Prospect Street.
Gentleman is here.
Okay.
Nick?
Hello. All right, so I think in our last meeting, we discussed it briefly. I don't think you were there. Excuse me?
The last meeting on April 3rd.
So April 3rd.
Okay.
I don't think you were there.
I was there.
I did, oh, you were, okay. I did drive by, I did see that the siltation barrier was put back up. You were still looking to do more work in that area?
Yes.
Okay. So at this point, we would need to see on a plan or something what work has been done, where it is in the 30-foot no disturbance zone, and what other work you were looking to do.
There's only like 3 more trees over there that have to come down.
Okay?
And I got 2 big ones that, in my backyard, that's not part of the conservation land.
Okay.
Um,
So that is out of the 100-foot buffer zone?
As far as I know, yeah.
Okay. Have you been out to the property, Matt, to see the 2 trees he's questioning?
I believe actually we saw them on the sidewalk. They were the 2 pine trees in the back.
Yeah. They're all within the 100 foot.
They're all within the
They're all within the
Okay.
50, and if you recall on this property, Mr. Chairman, we've had a no disturbance to the 50-foot buffer.
Yep. So at this point, it is within our jurisdiction, and it's work that you're looking to do that hasn't been applied for. So we do need to see a plan of what you have disturbed, and we'll need anything inside the 30-foot. We have a 30-foot no disturbance zone, so we would need the trees put back in that area.
Okay, ain't got a problem with that.
Okay?
I actually have a copy of your blueprint in my file. If you want, I can send it to you, like a copy of it.
Okay.
It's a scale blueprint, and that way you can draw on it, you know, where everything is, and it would be representative because it would be on a scale drawing.
So when can I finish taking these trees down is what I want to know.
We have to get the plan with what you're looking to do first. So as soon as you can get that to us, if you can get it to us before the next meeting, which is the 1st of May.
So this is going to continue?
It is going to continue, yes. Yeah, because it is a violation, and we need to have the violation documented and...
What about the 2
plan
big
remediation.
pine trees in the backyard? When can I take them down?
Unfortunately, there's still, it's work that has not been permitted. So they are still within our jurisdiction.
So I can't take them down?
Unfortunately not.
Mr. Chairman, I believe these are the 2 trees that you're referencing, sir?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay?
They,
Now, on Monday, we had all that wind, they're creaking. They're blowing back and forth towards the house.
Those were all the trees that, unfortunately, it was a
Yeah.
pretty windy day. So, I mean, they're definitely not dead trees. So at this point, we have to, as soon as you can get us that information, we can continue and allow you to take the trees down and then remediate the areas that you violated the 30-foot no disturbance zone on.
So this is going to continue then?
Yes, it is.
Unbelievable.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not even so sure that we should get some measurements on those trees. Even if they were to fall, they would strike the house. That was my observation, but I could definitely be wrong. But, and I didn't see the need to remove those, or for that matter, a considerable, was it 15 or so we saw removed within our buffer zone? So honestly, you significantly violated the law.
I don't know.
Yeah, we do know. So, we anxiously await your map and the map of all the other trees you took down in that zone. We've got the pictures, so we're really anxious to see that.
And there's the other item too on the property. I was not on the site walk, but there was questions on the drainage
That's correct.
coming down off of the street.
Yeah, who's responsible for that?
It's coming out of there's a pipe where the
Yeah.
riprap is, coming out of there, and it's, the riprap is just not working.
You might want to talk to Ken Mattson about that.
The certificate of compliance is his responsibility, right? With that?
That depends
That's what I
on
was
what your
told
real
by my
estate, that
attorney.
depends on what your real estate agreement says. I'm not privy to your real estate
All
agreement,
right,
so.
yeah.
But you might want to talk to him about that. That could be a warranty item on your purchase.
All right.
Yeah, but I mean, it does look like it's eroding pretty bad. And
I agree with you.
It's just gonna continue to erode, and that was part of the permitting process.
And you
that
probably
went
would want to
through,
have
was
him
getting
call me
that.
too, so I can go over it with him as to exactly what the issue is as well. But, I don't know, that could, considering that it's just a recent purchase, it could be a warranty item for you with him.
So at this point, do you know how to contact Matt for the plan?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so we're done?
We're done this evening, yes. Moving forward, enforcement order, 134 Crawford Street. I know this is.
I heard some very colorful metaphors on the way out.
134 Crawford Street. Enforcement order.
We still have a May 1st deadline for the next step on that process.
Okay.
So,
Then the next step is?
to hear from the engineer as to when we're going to have a notice of intent.
Okay. And to that end, you were down on Summer Street and noticed some infiltration through their,
Yeah, I'm still investigating that.
okay. If you can, because I went down there with the rain over the weekend and it was pouring.
On
down
Crawford
the
Street?
Nope, not Crawford, on Summer. Summer Street, where the
Oh, yes.
siltation barriers have been
Okay.
overrun.
Yep.
And it's definitely running right down into Baker Brook where the sediment bay had been put in next to the railroad yard entrance. And it wasn't fixed. When did it rain? Tuesday?
Monday.
Monday? It wasn't fixed Monday, so it was pouring into the brook.
Okay, I'll talk to DOT.
101 Pleasant?
Apparently, they are, what they say, 90% done with the bond underwriting, so I'm expecting, and they're still getting fines, I'm just expecting the bond like anytime.
Okay, so they still haven't supplied the bond.
Nope.
And they're still getting fined daily.
Yep.
And they didn't show up at court.
Nope.
For their hearing. Okay. And did they give you a date on the next hearing for the next group of tickets that
Not
they
yet.
haven't paid? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, is the
Mr.
fine currently at $300 a day?
Yes.
I believe it is, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we started at 100 and
Right.
saw nothing and increased it to 300 and.
And 300 is the max that we can leverage at.
That's the max we can go.
Yes, and unfortunately, it's a bond that the previous owner gave us in 48 hours. And it's the same bond company. So I have no idea why this owner cannot secure the bond. So,
It's getting expensive.
it is, because they have a finding against them now.
As my father used to like to say, and I often quote, it's taking an issue that should be very simple and making it very complicated.
All right, moving forward, Paul Stone and Gravel, Mr. Shirley Road. What's this, on 131, 133?
Yeah, those are 131 and 133.
Do you want to do Reservoir Road first? Like,
Sure. Are you handling, okay, you're doing both tonight, okay. We'll hold on that, 155 Reservoir Road. Yeah. Is it on the cloud?
Yeah, and the meeting notes.
Can I just say what he's setting up? This really is set up for fee and participation.
Generally, the board is,
Here at everybody's there.
well, I did notice they put this great big monitor right here.
Yeah, but it's on you, not them.
Yeah, well, they control the camera, so they do,
That's you.
they do take and put it on the easel from time to time.
It's like Rich Bird.
He's a handsome devil, obviously. Yeah.
Ask and you shall receive.
And I think you've been waiting.
I think it's the other direction, isn't it?
They're everywhere.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, thank
There you
you.
go.
So whatever you did, you did it like the other.
Yes, we can see it from the top.
I believe you.
Actually, I think we have it online. You do.
Yeah, it's the same.
For some reason, I drive.
Can I make one comment, Mr. Chairman, just because, and I
Sure.
made this comment at every meeting we've had, and
Everyone.
it still looks the same. This first lot from the left has been squared off in the back, and I'm still not seeing it reflected on these drawings, which makes me concerned that it's not really being correctly put into the numbers.
Which lot?
From the left, from the left, the first one. That one. Yeah, it's squared off on the left side. There's a pool there, and they put a fence that goes straight across, so if you take that and go straight across the property line, yeah.
This plan is the as-built, which is what their third-party consultant surveyors surveyed.
It's not what's there.
Yeah.
It's not what's there. Matt, Matt and I visited the site, and Mr. Matt,
Yes.
the squared offness of the house with the pool, lot 7, it doesn't look like that. That may be the as-built before we squared off, but the last meeting we were at, I brought the same point up, and
Yeah, it's actually squared off, and there's a, yeah, you got the pool outline here. So there is, this
Is that red area part of the square?
it's now part of
The green and the red.
it. It should simply be a straight line across the back from the
Actually,
green.
there is a square off right here. A straight line here and a straight line here, and then it's
Yeah.
kind of a polygon shape. They go in different straight line sections.
It's not, it's one straight line across the back, though.
I'll have to clarify, I can clarify that with Rosemary.
Yeah, if you could, because it's just getting aggravating.
If for some reason that is squared off, whatever this little square footage is, they're underdeveloped by 3,850 square feet.
Yeah, I
So
understand
there'll be a
that.
trade-off in that number. We're
I
not
just
gonna
wanted the
net-
numbers, that's all.
We're not gonna net negative anymore. So the number, if this is changed, this percentage number is not gonna change.
Yep,
So also like that, which we'll rectify it, we'll go out and try to verify it again. So
Good.
final plan memorialized.
great.
This shouldn't make these numbers wrong and not be able.
It won't change the bottom line,
No.
maybe shift them around. But I just want,
And only because that lot is so underdeveloped.
great,
So,
thank you.
Brian Marchetti, McCarty Engineering. We've been, as you know, working on this now for a year or so. This final plan before you here was put together cooperatively with the neighbors. We met on site. We walked every lot. And we've, both in AutoCAD, myself and Mike Hughes, have worked together to create this plan. So the yellow that you see on this plan is the exact square footage that's being converted back to the riverfront area is going to be restored. So all the yellow you see there on lots 1 through 4. In total, that brings us to about 13,500 square feet that's being restored. That number works with the square footage that the rear lot owner needs to cross in the future project, which we have designed and done. We need to resolve this and memorialize it so I can then move forward and permit that. So as it stands right now, with the yellow areas restored, it brings us to 8% of the waterfront area across the entire 52 acres. So that leaves us with a total of 19,244 square feet of riverfront area remaining or allowed to be developed in order to stay at the 10% or under. That 19,000 gives us about 1,000 square foot buffer. When we go this crossing for the estate lots in the back, so we do have a little bit of breathing room. And talk with the owners of that property, and everyone's comfortable with these numbers and what we see here today. So we're hoping that as you see it, we can review it. You can bless this plan, and we can close this issue so we can get this area restored now. Hopefully we have time now before middle of June or so. When we
Hey,
don't-
on the last lot, what's the blue area?
That's permitted riverfront area that wasn't ever done. So
Oh, okay, so they have some undeveloped on that end
they have
and the other, okay.
undeveloped
Yep,
here, there's a portion of lot 6 here that was undeveloped, and there's a tiny portion here as well, not long. So what you see in blue was never developed, that was part of the original final.
It stays part of.
And it stays part of, so we're not taking it away from.
Okay.
Away from those lots.
no, the one I have doesn't have the blue on it.
But the homeowners still have the ability to develop it.
Yes.
They're not giving that up, so.
So if that was fully developed, we'd be at the 8%.
Right.
So they don't want to obviously give up the rights to it.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, no, once a certificate of compliance is issued, their development envelope is closed.
They could come back and.
They'd have to come
file.
back and file, but
But that wouldn't impact-
this doesn't give them in perpetuity.
But it wouldn't impact the 10% of or the square footage of the whole lot. Because of the previous permit. So they could apply for it.
Because we're not going to use it. You're not going to use that.
We're not touching it.
So even though they have to come back, it's
Well,
still...
and again, I don't think that's quite right. Total as-built developed area is 89,000 square feet. That has nothing to do with the permitted unused area. That is area that has been developed as it shows on the plan. All the green areas, all the yellow areas, all the beige areas.
No, it's, Brian, you are. Yeah, so the,
So your 89,765 is all the developed area plus all of the approved undeveloped area? Is that what you're trying to say?
yes, it's accounted for, so we're keeping it in there, that pool. But we don't want to take it away. We discussed that the last meeting. that,
Yep.
You know, when the butters were here, you know, they're not giving it up. So if they ever wanted to come back and develop this,
Yep.
they still have a right to in the future, where the other owners down here, that it's all fully developed. We're gonna have to memorialize every one of these lots now, certificate of compliance.
Yep.
That says.
Yeah, so that'll be attached to their deed that those two lots, lot 1 and is that lot 8?
7 and 7.
Yep, 7 and 8 have some area of unpermitted developed area. Okay.
And just, what does, the yellow, what does developed look like?
Yellow is what's gonna be restored. So right now, the majority of it's mulch. So it's gonna be restored according to, you know, the spec and the Wetland Protection Act, which there's not a lot of detail in this section. So Ecotech put it together. I have it here, I didn't actually print it out. No, I had those. But the section of the Wetland Protection Act, 1058, section 5F, and there's 4 points that explain what they're looking for, and I mean, I can read it to you. But this is,
And you mean the regulation, not the act? Because the act is the law with 10.58, I think, is the regulation, DEP regulation.
it's 310 CMR 1058.
Right, yeah, so that's regulation, that's not law.
Yeah. So they specify, so where an applicant proposes restoration on site of a degraded riverfront area, alteration may be allowed notwithstanding the criteria, so blah, 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 let me see. Areas immediately on the river shall be selected for restoration. Restoration shall include the removal of all debris, but retaining any trees or other mature vegetation, grading to a topography which reduces runoff and increases infiltration, covered by topsoil at a depth consistent with natural conditions at the site, seeding and planting with an erosion control seed mixture, followed by plantings of herbaceous and woody species appropriate for the site. So those are the 4 items. They don't specify what. So the density is all determined based on the natural vegetation that's out there. So Scott Morrison at Ecotech and I, we walked the site. We met with all the neighbors, we walked each one of the properties, and this is the spec that they've come up with. So the way this was broken down is total numbers on the front page based on the total square footage of 13,500 square feet. You know, points 1 through 4, riverfront area, restoration area will be marked in the field. So if this plan is blessed by you, we'll have Bingham go out and stake the heck out of this thing, so the exact limits
Mr.
of
Chairman,
square
that's
footage.
exactly the point I'd like to bring up, is since the history of these properties even came along, we had concerns about demarcation and with regard to the continually moving past. We had recommended boulders back then, and somehow it never got incorporated. There's nothing in here aside from some stakes in the ground, and they'll rot out pretty quickly and look ugly as all heck. I mean, you know, your backyard being all staked out. We have, in the past, recommended that larger boulders be placed along that so they'd be aesthetically pleasing, and it would allow, you know, for you to allow to see through it without looking at those stakes, and they don't move very easily, they don't rot. So I'd be looking for some sort of designation that is something that could sustain the sands of time, so to speak, and the pushing of kids and, playing sticks and stuff like that.
The stakes I'm referring to is for construction. To
Okay.
demarcate this and build it out. This isn't just a
Okay.
stake in the ground to say this is the riverfront area.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm still very interested in creating some sort of more permanent designation.
Do you have a recommendation?
If I could point out
please.
that where we are at today was not done by the homeowners.
Oh, I
This was done
totally
by the
understand,
original-
yes.
So it's not like the homeowners have been slowly pushing
Yeah.
this back, it was the developer, so.
Oh, I know.
I understand the purpose of the boulders is to prevent things from moving back, but
Yeah.
it wouldn't have solved how we got here today.
Right,
That's my
we're
point.
totally sympathetic to what.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So what would you suggest for a demarcation?
Some sort of a good-sized boulder that the kids aren't going to be able to push around easily, and it just sits there on the property and trim up and around it, but.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, I kind of worry about my kids climbing up on the boulder and falling off of the boulder.
And I think that was part of the original discussion. Permanent was-
Something that doesn't pose an immediate hazard, once they've learned, they're going to
So like
climb
a
up.
2x2 or a 3x3 or?
2x2 is
Whatever you-
fine, set on the ground,
And how far apart?
I thought there were 2 or 3 or maybe 4 lots that had gotten into the order of conditions.
right?
Yep.
And
And we
they,
went through this discussion, and they were not that big, but they were, so I would suggest we just, whatever that was, we revisit it. and
Yep.
Use that
Use that
across the
one.
whole.
No, I think it was maybe a third of a yard stone, you called it, or?
I think during the original project, I think that wasn't put in the conditions. I think it was taken out.
It was discussed.
I know we discussed it.
Prior to you guys having put it in.
yes, Tommy Bertram was the inside of the
Totally
fence.
against it, but we overrode it.
Right.
Yeah.
Which at this point, where it's a violation, I mean, we're open.
Starting it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So at this point, you're looking for a demarcation of a 2x3 rock every 20 feet, 30
Sure.
feet, 50 feet?
20 feet, would that be okay? 20 feet or so?
I mean,
It's right near the wall, or almost to the wall. That's maybe 30 feet. Something like that, that's easily recognizable. So at some point, you will sell the house or something, and that way it stays. And when you sell it, you say, don't go past there,
yeah, I
otherwise.
mean, I guess my only, I have a tough time kind of visualizing what that would look like.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not opposed to somehow tagging this as conservation land, if it was even like something on the trees or, I just don't know, and it's only, I'm lot 4, Emily's lot 2, we obviously don't have lots 1 and 3 here, so I don't know what, what.
And I'd have to look at
think
the order. We
can
didn't
find-
require demarcation on every lot either.
It was just the first few.
It's on a few, right?
Emily, are you okay with this?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
Give me,
that's fair.
keep
I mean, it is
talking
something that
and,
we're pretty uniform on in our application,
Yeah.
so.
yeah.
At this point, let's put it in as 2x3 boulders every 20 feet, and if you come up with a better long-term idea, put it forth. It's not like you're gonna be out there tomorrow putting the stones in.
I mean, when you look at my property, Emily Zafino, Lot 2, Reservoir Road, I mean, every 20 feet, it'll get lost. That's it's a big stretch
Yeah.
in between this 7,400 square feet
Oh,
of
that's true.
land. So
This is just a.
let's just sit on it and we'll keep it on there and it'll come back up
I guess,
again.
yeah,
I'll bring it
that's
up again.
Yeah, well, I mean, we should put some form of demarcation tonight that we determined, and then if you guys come up with a better idea, you can present it and we can exchange it at that time.
Thank you.
So,
I guess it's a good point about the backs. I think the back, probably makes more sense. We're also proposing restoration with the sides of the yards.
In our yards.
Boulders kind of on the sides kind of.
yeah, yes, and one of my fears is the way that those areas will get lost. So in having the boulders in and around there, it will
Yeah.
preclude from, someday just kind of continuing to mow down.
Yeah, I mean,
Because in going back, honestly, DEP did not like the way these were drawn in as half circles.
Yeah.
And they specifically commented on that it should be squared off, because the way that is in a half circle is very hard to
Yeah.
maintain the boundary from property to property.
Right.
well, I
So
mean,
it is something that if we're allowing it in there, we do need to come up with some sort of long-term.
But we're not doing half circles now, it's much more square, right?
But it's just a little narrow spot there.
I mean, we're putting these in because we want them here. I mean, I don't see any reason why we would want to take them out. And I don't think why anybody who bought the house wants them, because there's really no privacy.
We all want barriers between the land, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean,
From the back, I can totally understand if you want to expand the back of the yard, that makes total sense to me, but the sides, just the natural barriers, I just don't see why anybody would want to do that.
Want to mess it up, yeah.
If they establish trees or something just between the lots, I'd be open to signage there between the lots. And then I'm on board with the boulders along the back.
That's
Are
good.
there going to be trees? I know, I think you were interested in trees, so some residents are, but maybe not all are. Going to put trees in that.
It's listed here.
Everybody, all the
Yeah.
homeowners are okay with what's in that specification.
It doesn't show it on a plan, but it lists what trees are going on what lots.
The minimum spacings of the trees and shrubs.
It's a quantity based on the square footage of
Yep.
restoration per lot.
But it doesn't say that there'll necessarily be any in that spot.
No, and we're, you know, the idea is whenever we go to actually restore this, we're gonna have, 60 trees and 135 shrubs to distribute per lot, set up, they'll all be spaced, whether, myself or Ecotech, they have specific spacing. It can be a condition, it can be, Matt can be there.
And I imagine with the homeowners, they'll be staked, where.
Yeah, and the homeowners wanna know that, so, like specifically on Emily's lot, she has a steep slope in her backyard. So she wants a barrier, a visual barrier, so a lot of the pine or hemlock type of evergreens, she wants along the top, so we can space more off along the top for her to kind of create that barrier, and if there are boulders in front of that, it's an even bigger barrier, so, we want this to work cooperatively with the neighbors, we're not
Those
trying
are
to just do
things
whatever.
between them, whether they'll have trees or not. Because clearly, some people clearly wanted all grass, because they planted all grass.
No, we clearly picked that area because we want it to be we want it to be trees.
When we drove by, there were people that grassed right up to the line.
Right, we all have grass right up to the line, and we
All right, so
all
why don't
chose,
why
we all
don't do
chose.
this? So at this point, we'll recommend boulders across the back, 2 to 3 foot every 20 feet. And the areas along the property lines between the lots, if we have hardwood tree sapling no more than 10 feet apart along the boundary lines.
Very nice.
Good solution.
Yeah, if that's,
I mean, that was, my intent was to have as many trees as possible on the sides of my lot, so that's fine with me.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, say that again, how do you?
So we'll
want that
have the
worded?
2 to 3 foot boulders along the backs, every 20 feet. And then we'll have a deciduous hardwood tree no farther apart than every 10 feet along the property lines.
I mean, I imagine it will be,
And the only reason I say that is because you've got some hemlocks and you've got some white pines, and those probably aren't as nice to have along the property line. But you do have red oak and white oak, and those would do better along the property lines, just give you a single stem. And a large growth, long-lived tree. Everybody good with that recommendation? Okay.
That's good.
So, you have anything else?
No, we're just gonna continue.
Okay. And is,
I put together a list of, after meeting with the homeowners, of various things that we would want adopted as part of this restoration. I think a lot of them are, I think, are pretty common sense ones, they just want it memorialized, but in whatever instrument, I assume it would be like a revised order of conditions that we would use here, that this list gets adopted. I'm sure Brian wants to talk about some of this stuff, and I think maybe we go by point.
Sure.
I don't know if everybody's had a chance to review it, or, so.
yeah, you want to run through it?
yeah, sure.
Okay. Do you have a copy of it, Matt?
Yeah, actually emailed all you guys a copy.
Okay.
And I just re-emailed it just in case, because I've had a lot of emails, so things get lost in these chains.
All right, so there are 15 points that the homeowners brought up. First one is Harbor Classic Homes is responsible for all costs associated with the restoration shown in the plans, complying with the requirements listed below, and obtaining a certificate of compliance for each lot, includes but is not limited to labor, materials, expense, fees, engineering, survey, and permitting associated with performing this work. You know, I think we all, he understands that, you know, that's why I'm here, we're working with him to figure this out. We'll be hopefully getting this plan approved. I believe you said we need to apply for an amended order, or does this resolve it and then?
Can we just resolve this under the enforcement order?
Yes, you can.
Okay, good.
So number one, I don't see how we can police that. I don't think that's outside our jurisdiction.
I mean, the
I'm just trying
fact of the matter
I'm
is,
just trying to get on the record.
we're under enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Harbor Classic Homes has to fix it. He's already paid for the surveying, he's paying for the engineering.
Okay.
He's got to pay to stake it out and execute the work. So I think once this is done, whatever the requirements are for how many growing seasons it needs to be observed before we can get a certificate of compliance per lot. You know, that to me is the next step. Once we execute the work, it's inspected, we wait and see what happens and how it grows, and I think usually the regulations say 2 growing seasons, which is typically a spring and fall, not 2 full years. So, you know, by this time next year, we'd be able to get a COC on every lot.
Okay.
So, second point, contractor performing the restoration shall have a minimum of 5 years of successful experience in the replication restoration of riverfront and wetland areas. Performing contractor shall provide a minimum of 5 successful project references completed within the past 5 years. Contractor is solely responsible for the success rate. Any failures shall be repaired by the contractor.
Again, not something we have jurisdiction over.
So how do you?
I understand why they want it, but I think this, you know, Ron's paying for it.
Yeah.
So he's responsible to execute the work according to Conservation Commission standards. It's going to be inspected by, you know, if you put a condition in there, whether it has to be me, Ecotech, or Matt, you know, it's going to be inspected. If it doesn't meet the specs, they're going to have to redo it.
Yeah,
So-
I guess I'm trying to figure out how do we protect ourselves from
Right.
doing this for the next 5 years of, because, I mean, restorations are very failure prone, right? You gotta be really careful with them. How do we get just some kid with like a backhoe that shows up and just digs a hole and plants some trees and?
Yeah, again, unfortunately, we can approve the specifications of the work and the plans presented. How they get done, as long as they're done within the regulations, that's the limit of our power.
Would you be able to make a recommendation of what company would do
It's
that?
not anything we
No?
can police.
Okay.
We can't dictate who does the work and how the work is done and who warranties it. I mean, we have our regulations that we have to.
It's just worrisome on
abide
our
by.
side because it's a business that has shown negligence in many different areas. You're seeing only one huge one, and I myself have seen many, and and right now they're withholding work that they owe us
Yep.
because of this.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Yeah, I
there's
think
just
that-
negligence and many.
Unfortunately, it's not something we can police, we can't have any control over.
Okay.
And I don't, you know, not that it's going to bring you much more comfort, but this type of restoration is a lot different than a wetland application. You know, we're not building a wetland or expanding a wetland in hydric soils and where there has to be certain groundwater conditions. You know, this is riverfront area where it's well outside the actual wet ground of the stream and the bank, so.
Not as
It's
vulnerable.
It's a landscaping exercise.
Well,
It really is.
and these are plants that were there
Yeah.
and were happy in that soil and that condition. So it's not like you're trying to put landscape plants in a native area that aren't necessarily
Right.
made to grow in those areas.
Understood.
Yeah.
And he's gonna be, you know, they're gonna be planted hopefully this spring, and he'll have 2 growing seasons. If they die by the end, he's gotta replace them anyway. So you have, you know, we have a year to.
Yeah, I just don't want it to go, so then we're here next year and we gotta replant everything and we just wanna I think everybody here just wants to get done with this, so.
Third point is inspections of the work shall be performed daily for compliance with approved plans. Inspections shall be by a third-party inspector approved by the homeowners. Inspection agencies shall provide written reports for inspections. They shall be engaged by an independent party at the cost of the inspection agency, shall be reimbursed to the independent party by class owners. You know, again, I think it's going to be a condition of yours that it has to be inspected anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be up to the homeowners to see who does it. I think the commission would.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really just preventing any sort of conflict of interest, really, is what I'm.
Yeah, well, our inspector would be Matt Morrow. at this point. He is our certified professional agent
Okay.
to make sure that the work is done, again, within our regulations in the application.
That wouldn't be,
And I've been doing these types of inspections for 32 years, so
Yeah, and-
it's not my first rodeo on this stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not, unfortunately, it's not gonna be daily, just because of the burdens on his time.
Yeah.
He does
I mean,
get out
my
weekly and,
My expectation, and from what I've been hearing, is that this is a week-long effort.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's not a, you know, that's why I was thinking daily, because it's gonna be, it'll be done quickly.
Yep.
So that's, I don't want it to get too far out of control where you do an inspection on Monday, they start doing something, you get out there Friday, and it's totally different, and now we're, you know, again.
I'm just,
I mean, you
I
can
can
certainly
coordinate
contact
with
Matt.
whoever does the work, what their schedule is,
Yeah.
and adjust my inspection routine accordingly.
Okay.
Because I do have a daily inspection routine, so I can adjust that accordingly, according to what his,
okay.
what the contract is.
Okay.
So number 4, restoration materials must be installed by June 15th, 2019. Survey and staking must be completed by May 8th. Homeowners shall be notified at least 3 weeks prior to starting installation. I think it's reasonable that, I think mid-June is the deadline for when you can do these plantings anyway, so I think that's pretty reasonable. I couldn't tell you the surveyor's schedule right now, so
Yeah,
I just can't say it's gonna happen, but I mean, you'll be notified along the way.
Yeah, I mean,
But you're looking that, I mean, we can put June 15th or June whatever.
We need a date.
I mean, I think that's in the regulation that needs to be through, outside of the growing season. June through
No,
September.
so that's something we can
So I think it's something that's
memorialize
reasonable
as
that
a
you
date.
can
That's
say.
the end date.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, I can't speak for,
so the planting day will get memorialized as June 15th, and the staking date, I mean, I just don't want to have somebody come on and stake on June 14th, and then when we look at it, like, you know, if there's an issue, you know, we have to come back here, you know.
Yep, but I guess some of that's just gonna be on you and the engineers.
Yeah.
No, we're concerned with the end date. We're not gonna start harping on them on the 14th. 15th's gonna come, it's not done, then we can act again.
number 5, at least 2 weeks prior to performing the work, the homeowners will provide the restoration contractor with a plan showing the arrangement and location of trees, types of restoration area. Homeowners will arrange the trees and shrubs in accordance with the approved restoration spec. In my opinion, I think it's gonna be hard to put plans together per lot. I think it's gonna be when you have the numbers here exactly per lot, what's gonna go there. So clearly, it's gotta be staked per lot.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how to enforce the specifics, but, we'll have Scott Morrison, Ecotech, go out there with the stakes, and we'll bang a stake in the ground according to his spec at the spacing. And, I want you to have your input, because we don't want to do this and you being happy with it, so.
So the expectation is that we have to be out there with him and say,
And that's entirely up to you.
Shrub there, that sort of thing.
If he's working during the day to get things done, it's gonna have to be kind of up to you to
Yeah.
make somebody available to, we can't tell them they gotta go from 5 PM to 9 PM to stake the stuff out at night, this is-
Yeah, I don't think
It's not
anybody's
something that
asking.
we have any jurisdiction over, so. Are most of these like that? I mean, is it just is it just between the
I think
homeowners and the,
I think
for the
so.
most part? Okay, because the date definitely we can memorialize.
I guess number 6 is, I think, a big one.
So 6, 2 mulch beds on lot 2 that are within the proposed restoration area shall be reconstructed by the contractor at a new location determined by lot 2 owner. New trees and shrubs of the same type and age shall be planted. So without seeing the exact restoration area and how they interfere with these beds,
I mean, it's documented on the plan. I mean, lot 2 is losing an entire, bed that they planted.
yeah, but it's not, it wasn't exactly, it's a mulch area, that's what, this one bed here, I can see if that's what that is within the restoration area. There are trees, and there are birch trees within it. Emily had said that, I think you said you spent thousands of dollars on those trees. So, I don't think it's reasonable to say, well, he's gonna have to go out and spend $4,000 on 2 new trees to replant for you somewhere else in the yard. I think if, you know, it's gonna have to be something that Harbor Class is gonna look at, and if you have a place you want them put, maybe they can be transplanted or dug up and relocated. But
Well, Scott had even said, and I consulted with a landscape architect who
Un-
put them in and
Unfortunately, I
said,
think this is, just to move things along, it's outside of our jurisdiction, so this is a conversation that you would need to have with the engineer and who's ever doing the work.
Okay, so when we
It's
had
not
this-
something that
when
we
had
can...
this conversation, he said we have to come here. and
yeah, he
talk
said,
about
no,
finding
we
a
come here and do this,
Who
because
is he?
Harbor Classic cannot be,
Who is he?
Yeah, Brian.
Well,
Okay.
because in my opinion, Harbor
Yeah.
Classic's not gonna pay $4,000 to relocate 2.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we're gonna approve the plan, and that's the areas that have to be...
Why can't the trees stay there?
Stays it.
I mean, they're in
they could stay, I wouldn't want them moved, I mean, there's
We've got
a,
birch trees in the restoration plan, right?
Absolutely.
So why can't the trees stay
absolutely,
there?
they can certainly stay there, but I'm not gonna give my trees to conservation, I can't take care of them, then they're done, they're my boys. We have these planted in there, you know,
I mean, we're not dictating
I
that you
wouldn't-
remove any of
exactly.
But I
the...
mean, you're not gonna, you can still maintain them.
I wouldn't want, how can I maintain them when it's in an area that I'm not supposed to touch?
Well,
We're
the trees
spec'ing
would
this
just grow with the
restoration
trees.
spec are smaller trees than what she has planted there. But I mean, if it's
Well,
2 trees.
If you wanna leave the 2 trees, leave the 2 trees
They can-
along with everything else that's there. I mean, with everything else that you have planned on the
Right.
restoration,
What I'm trying to prevent is being that charitable,
okay?
you know? It's a little bit hard to swallow, that, those areas. I mean, my other point is that we just push the line back and we make sure that the mulch beds aren't included in that area.
Okay.
I'm confused. Where's, can you show me the area again, please?
Here and out, in this finger between.
So in the yellow area down there.
Yeah, in the borders where there should have been trees left, when you buy a new home, you can spend money in many different areas, and we thought that was of utmost importance to start growing our trees. We spent a lot of money putting that shade back in there.
And,
But they can
I mean,
stay,
you're
right?
not taking, you're
They
not
can
planning to
stay,
take
right.
the trees out.
But I wouldn't have any, I couldn't go in there and do my weeding, or, you know, I
Well, they would just
couldn't,
become part of the natural landscape.
right, and that's not what I wanted, that's not why I put them in there. I put them in
Okay.
there so that I could take care of them, we have shrubs, you know, there. I garden and I tend to the land, this is why I put them there, before we knew this. I mean, we
Yeah.
got permission, Matt, you know, spoke to the landscape architect and said grass area is fine. He did ask about the mulched area and putting natives back there, and Matt said, don't do that just yet, so we didn't. But, I mean, I just can't see giving all of those back, and this is where we do need you. I mean, Matt kept saying, tell us what you need, tell us what you want to make this happen, and this is why we're here. You know.
We can't dictate that they move your landscape bed. I mean,
Well, I don't want it moved and-
before us,
Right.
that's gonna be put back natural woodlands.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Dwyer.
what if they gave you 2 new trees and planted them where you wanted in your yard?
Fantastic.
I think that's reasonable because they're on the list. But, you know, but the trees in the spec, you know, aren't the mature, you know, $4,000 trees. So
Agreed,
what I'm saying is you-
but at least that would be a compromise where, hey, you know, we realize they're not mature trees, but we're gonna plant these smaller trees wherever you want them in your yard, and something like that. I think that would be a reasonable.
How big are you?
They were 8 to
Again,
10
I don't-
foot
it's really
trees
not
that I paid
something
for.
that we have any jurisdiction over. I mean, it's,
Agreed.
it's something you kind of have to have a little conversation with the engineer about. We can't dictate that.
And again, the reason we're here is from the negligence of this company, so this is why we need you.
Yeah.
We
but
need you to-
Again, it's outside our, we have no authority to tell them that they have to pick that bed up and those plants and put those plants
Well, yeah,
someplace
we don't
else.
want them to do that anyway.
Okay.
so.
Mr. Chairman, could we make a strong recommendation that they provide trees somewhat, you know, not 25 footers?
No,
but-
they're not 25. I mean, they were 8 to 10 foot trees that were
Yeah.
put in there.
And it would make a strong recommendation that they in fact...
What would you recommend?
I'd recommend that they replace the trees on the property as originally designated, and of a similar type that were planted in an area unknown to the new home buyer, that essentially, you know, this was a place you shouldn't have. And I would, is that
I will have discussions with you.
It's a
Yeah,
recommendation, so it's,
recommendation.
we have no way to,
We would look kindly on that.
And since we're on Lot 2, yeah, that's fine, we can make a recommendation. But again, if, we can always just move the line back and save the beds, because they're my beds. The safety portion that Brian spoke about with getting like a tree screen, so in the, let's see, I don't know how to tell where it is on there, Brian, if you can point out the approximate area, it's probably maybe about 15 feet across that would go down into a pretty steep drop-off that I
Right off the back,
wanted.
there's a steep drop off to fire fields, and that's where we talked about placing evergreens or something like a creek, create a real stream year round that's green, it's not gonna just be a stump or a trunk. So,
all right, and that's gonna be part of the 60, or in
yeah, so
addition
it'll
to
be
the
part of
60?
the trees, part of the trees that are spec on it, so.
That are for that lot?
That are for that
So
lot.
lot 2, we had 33, so we have half of the trees going on lot 33.
Yes.
Okay.
Lot 2.
I'm sorry, lot 2.
33
So half
saplings.
of the trees going on lot 2.
7,400 square feet.
Okay. I mean, I don't have a problem with that, because,
Yeah, because it's more than half the total.
Yeah, so it's all divided by square footage.
Yep.
So it's the even ratio.
yep. Yeah, so if there is some placement and some groupings, I don't myself have a problem, I don't know if any other members do.
Okay.
Next.
Number 7, all wood chips from the mulch beds identified in lots 1 and 4 shall be removed and replaced with 6 inches of topsoil. Provide plantings in the restoration areas per the spec in the homeowner's arrangement. Hydro seed areas outside of the restoration area. So I agree, whatever's disturbed, however we reshape this, whatever lawn areas have to be, are disturbed will be seeded. There's nothing wrong with that. Removing all the wood chips within the mulch beds, I don't think removing all the wood chips is really necessary because it's all organic. It's going to be covered with 6 inches of topsoil. So whether it's, scratched up, scarred up, and soiled over, I don't see the point in removing all the wood chips. It's another step that is unnecessary in my opinion.
I mean, personally, I look at it as these wood chips would have been placed here if this area wasn't cleared like it was, and then this sort of, stop planting grass order had been however directed. I also worry that the wood chips are going to potentially affect the success of the restoration because they're not natural to the area. And I guess I'm looking to the commission on what is the,
How long have the wood chips been there now? 3 or 4 years?
I think it was constructed in
a year and a half.
Year and a half.
Year, 6 months to a year and a half, depending on those lots.
Yeah, so they've broken down at this point.
Yeah, and I think when they're driving on it, it's going to be all scarred and scratched up. It's
Yep.
not like it's a compacted mat that they're just going to put one on top.
I myself have no problem with it, because you're putting the conservation mixed blends, hydroseeding back over them, so. I
And it's-
myself don't see a problem with the loam going on top of the.
And we spec 6 inches of loam.
Yep.
So we're putting a lot of loam back. It's not just a skim coat.
I wish I had that.
Tell me about it.
There's
Every-
Yeah, and that's in your
It's in the
plan
spec.
here, putting the 6 inches back, so.
Yep.
Okay.
It's in the spec, that's going to be inspected. He's got to be held to the spec. So.
I mean, my original, in coming to the commission and asking about this land was because of a tick infestation, that my tick company has to come out, they have to come out double what they do anyone else, because he said, well, you have a tick bed back here. Of course, this is a favorite place for them, all these big, large, it's not just nice mulch, it's chunks of rotting wood, and that's where they like to go. We also, in Lot 1 and covering Lot 2, thousands of mushrooms, fungus everywhere. That just, I mean, this is what this stuff does. Just creates fungus and ticks.
How thick is the mulch?
It's not mulch, it's chunks of
Wood
wood.
chips.
Wood chunks,
I mean,
yeah.
I would,
This
on
isn't
my lot,
nice.
at least 4 inches thick.
Yeah, but again, if we're covering all of that with the 6 inches of topsoil, and then we're growing meadow mix and wildlife mix on top of that, I mean, it's gonna cover up and help decay all of the woody material that's there.
And then whatever trees we plant are gonna go through that.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why the mulch needs to be removed myself.
Any irrigation heads within the restoration area shall be relocated. Irrigation heads located, if any, located in non-restoration areas whose coverage area is reduced by the restoration shall also be relocated. All work shall be performed by the contractor that originally installed the irrigation system, and the cost for the modification shall be paid by Harbor Classic. You know, I understand what you're saying. I think this is going to have to be looked at case by case and lot by lot. You know, I understand we can't bury heads that are not going to be 10, 20 feet in the woods. So I think this is something else that we're going to have to work out with Harbor Classic on a lot by lot basis. Understanding that it's a problem. I'm not saying this is out of our responsibility.
Right, they're gonna be removed, right? The piping, everything's gonna be removed.
But yeah, typically something like that, you can cap it or.
Oh, no, don't leave it there.
No, yeah,
Don't
there's
leave it
all-
there. You wanna.
Yeah, there's
Get
pipe
some
work
there.
underneath and
Yeah, you should be able to just, I mean, how many heads are
should
we
be able to
talking
pull it
about?
right out. Yeah.
on R6, yeah.
So we're not talking about that much, so, okay.
I mean, I guess how do we get what I'm worried about here is that there's, you know, we're making an effort here to get the whole development into compliance. You know, we don't really have much protection here to make sure it actually gets done, you know, with, you know, without us having to invest more money into getting it into compliance, and, you know.
Well, this exercise will codify it, right? Essentially, this is even being recorded. And essentially, your terms and conditions will probably be capturing. Will we capture this whole document?
Yes, but we don't have any authority to enforce a lot of this, so.
Right.
And
But
I
if
don't
there's-
think Brian is agreeing to these on a case-by-case basis. They'll work with the homeowners as best they can.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Can we prevent or delay establishment of the access to the back lot until the restoration has been established and completed? That's really the only leverage that we have is once
I don't-
once
can
this
we,
has been
Matt?
established.
That's a different owner. It's not the
I
same.
don't,
It's not Harbor
I don't know how we
Classic.
can. I mean, unfortunately, in our eyes, legally, it's the homeowners that are responsible for it. It's not anybody else's. And
I guess the other side of that is until it's in compliance, I mean, the restoration is complete, they can't do any additional development.
That would be.
So just timeline-wise.
Well, and you do make a good point there, until such time as the disturbed areas have been remediated, can we permit them to use that as their disturbance? So, I mean, it is in their benefits to remediate this as fast as possible and as correctly as possible.
So timing-wise, if you're setting the date of March, or June 15th, you know, I'm crossing across the stream, I have to permit that whole back thing. It's gonna take more than 2 months for me to, I mean, the plans are done, but I'd have to file them, go to the meetings, we'll have a couple meetings to review it, so it's gonna be past June. By the time that back stuff gets approved anyway,
Yeah, so I mean, but you do make a point that the remediation areas have to be acceptable prior to them using or disturbing again. Or at least in that, you know, if they need 19,000 square feet and we're.
I don't see a reason why I
15,000.
can't permit it, but we just can't start construction until after.
I mean, we certainly would put something in the order of
Yeah, you should have
conditions
a
that you
condition,
can't
absolutely.
disturb until
That's
this area's been cleaned out.
That's-
But it sounds like you're already
reasonable,
aware of that, so, okay.
Yep.
So that would be the only bit of, I guess you'd call it leverage. Yeah, they would have to have it.
Well, what about other business that the company has just doing in the town? I mean, they've obviously skirted town regulation in this case. What about in other cases that, I mean, what
Are
about
they
doing
before
further?
us for anything else, Matt? Harbor Homes?
No.
Okay.
Point number 9, restoration contractors shall provide their own water source for all work. I don't know how that's gonna work. I don't know.
I don't know how much water is required for
Yeah, I
this
don't know.
to get a restoration.
They have been known to just hook up to the next house over and,
Small water bill.
yeah.
I mean, again, that's something you have to work with the contractors on. I mean, it is in everybody's best interest to get this done, to get this remediated, to have it succeed. So, I mean, there is a little give and take.
The tenant contractor shall remove all encroaching prickers and other invasive species within the mulch beds or within 50 feet of mulch beds, including those species in protected and non-protected areas.
I think we can replace the term prickers with thorny brush.
I put it in quotes.
Leave it to the experts.
Prickers is a technical construction term, you know.
I mean, I actually
That
don't
my
have a
son
problem
used
with
as he was
just,
sliding into them.
I don't have a problem with just leaving invasive species to be removed.
And that's, I think within the restoration areas is
Yep.
appropriate for that, because we're going to have to clear it out to put the loam down and everything else.
Yep.
And what about just beyond,
Going beyond it, where do you stop?
I mean, that's
I
why
think
I
it's
threw
should be his
what Mark, I mean, my concern is that we don't, my understanding is that we are allowed to, if those invasive species do come into the riverfront area, we're allowed to clear them out. But for the next year and change, we're not going to really be able to go into that restoration area because we want it to succeed. So I'm trying to get a buffer set up that allows, some time for the restoration area to come in.
because they'll move
That's
about
the
15, 20 feet a season, like a year, I've noticed.
Yeah, I mean, I'd hate to see them doing much work outside of that area if it hasn't been disturbed. But at least at a minimum, removing invasives from the restoration area. Unless somebody else has a suggestion. Okay, moving
So
forward.
items 11 through 15, I'm okay with. It's all standard. 11,
Remove all garbage.
contractors shall remove garbage. 12, all work will be performed using low-impact methods. Care and protection shall be used to prevent their lawns and such. I think that's all common sense. Straw wattles will be the primary method of erosion control, so it's pretty much the base of slope from all these lots. We're going to be replacing the slope, so we'll put wattles along the back.
But just wattles though, not.
Just wattles.
Not the fence,
Yeah.
okay.
Homeowners can install the shed shown in the restoration plan. That was something that the homeowners wanted to do, and I guess they discussed with Matt. If we showed a
Yeah.
shed on each lot, it's something they'd be
They're
allowed
outside of the 200 feet anyway, right?
No.
Inside, that would be inside the 200.
My garage is in the 200 feet zone.
Black boxes.
So the 3 square X's?
Yeah.
That box, that box, that box, and that box.
Okay, I guess I've got an old plan.
Again, that's not something Harbor Classic's responsible for. They're not
No,
paying
it's
for any of
just,
that, but
We just want to be able to put it in over the summer. Put the sheds in.
Oh, I do see the 4th, I do have it, okay.
so.
Anyway, it would be outside of the restoration area, it would be within whatever you want to call this new area, disturbed area, the allowable disturbed area.
And they're all outside the 100.
Yes.
I should do that.
And,
Just keep in mind, and I'm looking at these conditions here, that any of this erosion protection is subject to adjustment based on my inspections.
yeah, there's an area at the bottom of ours that I would want more protection on because it's just it was so poorly graded during construction that it would wash
So the
away.
only thing I
Could take
think
a look at that,
I would
absolutely.
have a problem with, and it's just more from a documentation standpoint, is the shed should be RDAs, not installed under an enforcement order. I mean, the work itself, I have no problem under the enforcement order, but the shed should be RDAs for each property.
What is that? What is that?
you guys
You have
can
to wait
find those.
until the COC gets issued, or you do the RDA?
No, you can do it concurrently.
Whatever, yep. Yeah, but those should be
So you
RDA
said
filings,
come back there.
specific filings for each, yeah.
There shouldn't be any other expense on, plans or anything, because it's already memorialized on the plans. and
Yep.
stuff, so that's what you
Yeah,
want.
yeah. I'm just trying to kill two birds with one stone.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I guess we'll just overlook at
Well,
the sheds.
considering that
Everybody's good with the
everything's being taken
locations that
Are
we're
there
showing.
any sheds right now in the
RDA on each
restoration
lot?
area? And
So I guess as long as everybody's good with the sheds, just so. I don't
Yeah, the
have-
location, but they have, before you put them in, they have to be filed for.
that is one.
And the final point, contractor shall remove all temporary elements, silt fence, hay bales, walls, et cetera, once the restoration area is established. So that's standard. Understood.
So can I ask what's the path to us getting the COC for the development? So we-
At this point, get the restoration done,
Yeah.
and then
So
we'll have the
restoration.
as-bills with the restoration plan, and requesting a certificate of compliance.
Okay, so, yeah, I guess just so I'll spell it, just because I don't do this stuff every day, so. So plant in June, 2 growing cycles, so fall growing, or we'll get the summer growing cycle, and then fall growing cycle of 2019. We can apply, and do we need an as-built done after
Well,
that?
we're assuming that what you have presented is the as-built, so you just need a
Okay.
quick stamp on that saying, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
what it is, and
So
away
we
we
get
go.
staked out, so, okay. So no backup survey needs to get done, and then,
I think there's been plenty of survey work done.
it also took forever to get the survey done, so we got.
Just on the as-built, will these plantings be shown on the as-built?
I think we can have a table per lot. I don't know if we're going to show a spot. I mean, can this be the as-built? And Compass can put them all, does it have to be lot by lot by lot?
I am fine with it being done as you have it, and then we could just submit a copy with each lot.
Yeah. 'Cause I believe.
I think that during the certificate of compliance review, we would go out and make sure that the plantings are as prescribed.
And I'd like
I
to
don't
take,
think we have to
I
go
think
that.
the table per lot's a great idea, because
Yep.
that way you can
It's
go
very
out
easy to walk
each
out.
lot and say, oh, okay, yep, we got it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the summer, fall being the 2 seasons for growing. It's kind of hard at the end of the fall to figure out what's
Well,
alive
I'm
and
gonna
what's
wanna,
not.
I'm gonna wanna at least see what happens in the late spring.
Okay.
And see if anything suffered winter kill, because if it did, it's gonna have to be replaced.
Okay, so we're talking not until.
We're talking
spring
a year,
2020.
right, yeah.
until-
Late spring, yeah.
Maybe that's sort of for your protection, too.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to get a timeline.
And I think a growing season is a year. It's not a calendar season. You know, one growing season starts in the spring, ends in the fall. It's not, spring's not a growing season, summer's not a growing season. A growing season is one growth cycle from spring to fall.
Then I think the order of conditions for the development expires fall 2019, so what do we have to do?
Put in a request for an extension permit for all of it.
Okay.
And that's just a letter, right?
Yeah, it's just a letter.
And I do want to, I'm not doubting you, but I do want to check on the growing seasons. 'Cause I
Okay.
think it is a spring and fall are 2 growing seasons. I've done,
It's worth a check.
I'll check it. I want
Yeah.
to find out that, because I know I do a lot of work in Framingham.
Okay.
And I've got several replication projects. with
Why don't you just send an
Conservation
email to Judy, ask her that question, copy me, so that she responds to all of us, so we all have the answer, and then I can forward it to the members.
Commission. And I just know with Framingham, it's always
Okay,
been.
yeah, as a horticulturist,
Yep.
a growing season is
Yep.
one growth season. It's not, you know, a plant doesn't have 3 growing seasons a year.
This would be a good exercise.
Yeah.
What's your farmer?
Find out for sure.
Plantings. You get your plantings.
But it's not a growing, you know, for an oak tree, there doesn't have 3 growing seasons in a year.
Per year.
Checks his
One, right?
All right. So at this point, we have the completion date of June 15th added. We have the 2 to 3 foot boulders every 20 feet along the back. We have the trees at a maximum of 10 feet apart along the property lines, the deciduous oaks. We have removal of invasive species plants inside the restoration zone.
Could I, just one point of clarification?
Yeah.
The boulders on the back, is that lots 1 through 4 or lots 1 through 7?
Should be lots 1 through 7, all of them.
I guess the argument I'd make for lots 5 through, or maybe not 5, but, because that's already been overdeveloped a little bit, but lots 6 and 7 really haven't been overdeveloped. I mean,
honestly,
You know, why?
every lot
why we still have
has,
6 and 7?
well, every lot has violation on it. So every lot expanded outside of their green envelope of development that was approved.
But lots 6 and 7 are net underdeveloped.
But they still went outside of the development envelope. And lot 6 has blue?
Lot 6 is a tad early, yeah.
Okay.
I'm just thinking lot 6 and 7 are net undeveloped. You know, why they weren't expecting boulders in their lots.
I mean, we can open up to others. Myself, I'd like to see it demarcated across all 7 lots.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and they're all
Okay.
equally distant from the...
Yep. So, okay. All right, any questions? You're good with that? Okay. And certainly, I mean, Matt's Monday through Thursday in the office. If you do notice something going on that you're concerned with, just give him a quick call. You can certainly go down and take a quick look.
So after oaks
And-
along the property line every 10 feet, you had something else?
The removal of invasives.
Okay.
And the remediate in the restoration zone. Then unfortunately, some of the other stuff that you've got in the listing, you just have to work with them on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, one quick question.
Yes.
I know at the last meeting, we discussed Lot 5, on McGinnis's lot, you allowed the just wildflower for restoration. So I know there was discussion about lots 1 through 4, whether they wanted all the trees or if they'd go with just
Well,
wildflowers. So-
the thing with McGinnis's lot was an inner riparian zone restoration, not just an outer riparian zone restoration because of the work that the logger did. The inner riparian zone was decimated, so the wildflower restoration on the inner riparian zone was allowed because it was an inner riparian zone restoration. We had him do some plantings. I mean, we can move along from that, but, I mean, you know, that was an early on restoration work. So it's a separate issue. We have restoration work that needs to take place in the outer riparian zone based on the violation, so let's pay attention to that, please.
Right. I just thought, is it Dan, ready? I thought he was saying something about, well, there was debate when we were walking around your property, he's not here, so we can't speak to it, about whether he wanted less trees and more seeds, and I don't know if that's not an issue anymore, then I'm good with what we submitted.
I thought it had to do with, you know, lot 5 was allowed to do one thing, and lots 1 through 4 have to do something different. You know, I think we're just all trying to play by the same rules.
There's no trees on that lot, right?
No.
On the planting schedule.
No, we're not doing any restoration, because according to him, he spent $12,000, he wasn't gonna sacrifice anything else on his lot, and, you know, I understand completely, we were able to get to where we needed to be on these lots, so I'm fine with it, I just didn't wanna close this out and they're not here and have an issue with it, without at least bringing it up.
Yeah, I honestly don't know, I can't speak for it.
Okay. That's fine, we'll stick to the spec we submitted.
I can contact him myself and talk to him about it.
And just so I'm clear about what will happen with the plantings, that we pick the, you know, the trees and the shrubs, we have our numbers, but the whole entire thing will be covered in a seed mixture? So it will all be whatever the grass is, with the trees growing while they're, is this
That's
what everyone's,
There's 2 different types of seed mixtures that.
okay.
the spec
All right,
has.
I just want to make sure that I was clear on that.
So there's a conservation mix and a wildflower mix. So it's, you know, I don't know.
If there was a choice, I would recommend the conservation wildlife mix.
Okay. All right, we'll use that.
Yeah,
The wildflowers,
If you can
a
spec
little more
that in
for
your-
an open space, so,
Spec that in your
okay.
recommendations or
Okay,
your
so just-
order, and we'll.
New England Wetland Plants has a riparian mix that should fit that quite
Okay,
nicely.
these all came from New England.
Yeah, then but they do have an extra mix that should, it's a different one, but it should work.
Okay.
So either riparian mix or conservation wildlife mix.
So the wild flower mix that's on there is not acceptable?
It's really not for the plantings and everything you're doing in there.
Okay.
Wildflower
I don't
mix
know,
isn't, no.
yeah, I don't know, I think the intent of the reason why I started
The
with that is-
wildflower mix is, you know, 75 or 85%, just a hard fescue. And then wildflowers mixed in, where the conservation mix is more natives, it's not just a grass mix.
Yeah, it's some clover and stuff.
Yes, yeah, there are I think there's 8 or 9 different native plants that are in there. So that would be a much better mix for the remediation than the wildflower mix.
They will probably take better too.
Well, I mean, that particular mix should have seed elements in there that will grow at different times of the growing season.
Okay.
Stuff that would be a little more drought tolerant, yeah.
Yeah, so we can cross out the wildflower mix.
Matt, you've been on the property a lot. Do you think for this area behind us, that 20 feet with these boulders is going to be adequate demarcation for Lot 2?
I'm gonna have to walk it again. I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
All right.
20 feet's good.
Yeah.
You can put it closer if you want.
More stuff that gets to fall off of.
Yeah.
Well, look at all the fun they'll have playing, running around.
The closer they can jump from one to the other.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
They're jumping 20 feet. All right.
So,
So at this point, we'll close this matter until such time as it's remediated, and Matt can certainly go out and take a look when you're starting to work. Just give him a quick holler.
perfect. So, everything goes well, we'll see you next year.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Thank you very much.
Anyway, it's pretty good what you guys were.
Nice job, guys.
Together.
Really, nice job.
Thank you.
Not easy for everybody and.
Everybody worked together. It was,
Congratulations.
I appreciate the commission being flexible to us. Tough situation.
It's an unusual situation for everybody.
So, I mean, I really do appreciate that. I know everybody else does too. So, thank you. Thanks.
All right, moving forward, lots 131 and 133.
So, I wasn't sure which, I also submitted to Matt the restoration for the 181.
Okay.
It's basically the same spec that we submitted for these guys.
So the only thing I had asked Matt about that was, we're not privy to any of the conversations with DEP, so we don't, I mean, we can't say anything to Ecotech's recommendation, because we don't know what DEP has told you to do.
So we met with DEP, he got his enforcement order, he was fined. We met with Denise Child and their other reviewers, and he settled in the meeting, and they've been paid. He was paid last month. So, at that point, the issue was settled between DEP and POW. So they said, now you have to satisfy the board, the commission.
So they're not gonna put out like an ACO?
I'll forward you the
Administrative
documentation.
consent order with conditions.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they said it was, so what they did was, they didn't appeal it, they didn't offer their own conditions for it. They simply fined him for work without a permit. So that was the enforcement that was put on Powell. There were no conditions that were issued. The conditions were done because we had an order of conditions with local Concom. They decided not to intervene. So we have to satisfy now. We satisfied DEP, and now we have to satisfy you.
Okay.
So we have the spec, the plan is as we submitted it back in December, was the same area. So it's this little thing right here that's within 100-foot right here. This is the 100-foot line, this was the 200-foot line. So it's this 6,900 square feet that's in here.
Yeah.
And that's what the spec that we had submitted was for, 6,900 square feet, using the same protocol.
Okay.
So Steve's ready, we just wanted to have you review it, say this is okay, and he'll execute the work.
I know I've been out on the site, and I have no problem with the spec for the remediation of the inner riparian zone.
Yeah, and it's the same, the trash, whatever has to be removed, restored,
So is this something we just have to incorporate in our order as an amendment?
I don't think we have to amend the order. I think we can approve it as a field change, but that's up to the commission.
Okay, yep.
How you guys want to handle it.
So this just submitting restoration, we'll just accept it as a field change.
So, Mr. Chairman.
I will recommend that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just to help me understand, so essentially there was intrusion pulling in, now that they're being asked to go back to the 200 feet, and you're repairing, you're taking care of that area?
So we've permitted this as it stands. So this is the 100-year flood area, this is stormwater. There's the basin really, along the berm here. The area demarcated in the hatch, just so no stock ponds can occur. So this has been approved, this hasn't been built yet, this has been approved. We need to do the restoration. As part of it, there was no restoration protocol submitted back when we got this approved in December, so that was supplemental to what's already been approved. I just want to get it memorialized and approved, so now we can move forward and do the work that's getting done. So all we're here to discuss tonight is just that 1,600 square feet.
And it's said for that 6,900 square feet, is that area between the berm and the tree line?
It's the back of berm, previously. It has.
So that was that area that Megan Selby walked with us.
We walked with DEP in that back in January. So that's the 181.
While you have that out, Brian, do you have the riverfront numbers that you had submitted?
I just printed this one thing out, I didn't bring it with me.
Okay, because I just had a quick question, unfortunately I didn't bring it, and I will probably email you on it quick, because I was confused as to, you had excluded a rather large portion for the stormwater.
Yes.
And I just didn't quite figure out how you came up with the numbers, because it looked like you had excluded about half of the area. And I was just trying to figure out how you excluded half of that area inside the outer riparian as stormwater. I mean, I know we have the berm, I know we had the basin.
There was an email I put together back in December.
Yeah.
That documented every square footage of it. Matt actually came to my office,
Yeah,
sat down next to me. In AutoCAD, I clicked on every area.
yeah.
So he understood where the numbers came from.
Mm-hmm.
It was all based on the stormwater basin and the full extent of the, I believe it was a 100-year storm high water elevation.
Yep.
And that was the area within it.
Okay. And so we have the basin, we have the berm. Where is the 100-foot, or where is the 100-year flood line?
100-year flood line is the hatches.
Okay, that's the hatches.
Yep.
All right, can continue. Let me just see if I can find it, because it just didn't make sense.
So I just put a quick color of the actual as-built survey of where this site stands today. Obviously, we need to cover final NOI. It's what my understanding is of current site. So what you see is, the buildings, the greens, landscape area. This is the current pavement. This area over here, the darker hatch, this was, I believe, already covered in order conditions years ago.
Yeah, and that's 133.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this whole property now is 133,
Okay.
both of them. So this is a 14.19 acre parcel, the back here, and the hatch, the dark line is the property line. So this piece here is 14.19 acres, and this piece here, which is where the store is, and the stockpile, material storage area for the hardscaping, is 5 acres. This brown line here, I ran out of time calling it this afternoon, so I just highlighted the outer brown area. That's all compacted gravel right now. The light green is like a lawn area, just vegetation, not maintained lawn. It's outside of the tree line, and the dark green is the tree line. So this line you see here is a 100-foot buffer zone. There's your 50-foot, there's your 30-foot untouched. That's these three lines in here. So today you can see this area here is pretty much all outside of the 100. Back in here, when the clearing is some impact from the 100, which is all just back to gravel. The Powell's just got rid of their tenant back here, I believe in the last few weeks. So now they owned it, but they had leased it to another contractor.
Yeah, that was Robel, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So now this entire property is within their control. Right now, this edge of pavement is where they're stockpiling their mulch, right in this area. Through here is where there's all crushed stone, different levels and sizes of riprap and crushed stone, over here for sale. So none of this material, the gravel, which is only from here down, is where they're storing material. They have nothing back here now. Everything that's here down is either the landscape block that's palletized, stones that are within bins, and then right on the back side of this bin, in the gravel area, they have different sizes of riprap to process, stone dust, and things like that. The mulch is stored over here. None of this is part of the whole material processing area, so you don't have any active mechanical processes going over in this area. It's generating sediment. It's purely stockpiles of stored stone back there and stone here and mulch here. So I think the plan moving forward, isn't to just come and try to get permanent with the impact on what's here now and have us negotiate, dictate, not trying to what we can do, what we can move. I want to take this plan now and sit down and see what their plan is now in the next few years, or whatever it is, to how they're going to use this area. And I think it's prudent to take another month to figure that out, to develop a real plan of what they actually want to do. I know you talked about trying to grow this area a little bit more, knowing full well there's a slope here. We're obviously dealing with the 30-foot, 50-foot in here, but it's all slope, so they want to expand this area, move up the slope of riprap, just to get a little more usable area in here, where they have all this stone storage. Same thing with the buffer. Back here, we know for stockpiled stone, there's going to be clearly sediment from runoff and whatever, so being forward-thinking and using part of this area up here is some sort of depression to collect sediment from the runoff. Right now, that naturally outflows over this area. There are no stormwater controls down here, so.
You mean like a retention basin?
Something like that, yeah, but, it's me being more forceful, telling them things I think will give and take and work well with the commission to achieve the rest of what he wants to do out here, so he's completely on board with it, so. Knowing this is a gravel area where it's right now just a clean slate. Trees were cleared. There's all the slopes out here. So there's things we can do to try to add a little bit of protection, while at the same time, achieving what he wants to use for later on here. This whole area is not going to be used for stockpiling gravel, salt and mulch and all this stuff. The end game here is more the hardscape. So it's hardscape business. The stuff he hauls in, all the mulch, things like that are going to be all stored over here. All of the manufacturing stuff is going to stay on 181 and take place over on that side. So this is going to be a big sediment generator. But again, we have to just look at where we are and we should buffer zones and actually show you what he wants to do, and I can come back with a real plan that shows the grading and how we're dealing with the stormwater.
You didn't really mean stockpiling salt.
What I'm saying is that's not what's
Oh,
happening.
okay, yeah, it's not doing that.
No,
Okay.
the salt bin's over here, it's
Yeah.
undercover, so.
It's all covered.
I'm just saying over here, it's not gonna be that type of manufacturing
Okay.
type of yard. This is more his retail and stuff he's selling over here, where customers walk up through, customers walking up through the gravel yard where all the screens and directions going on. So I wanted to color it up so you can kind of get a visual of what's going on here and where things are in relation to the buffer zones. And again, I think the impacts you see here, as we've discussed as part of the last file, this wetlands doubled in size in the last 7 years or so. So it's grown out, things that really weren't in the buffer zone and within the 50 or 30 before over the last 7 years now are. So.
Any idea why? That's all sand.
Well, if you look back prior to development, there is a very distinct wetland or drainage area from the wetland across where they developed to the brook.
From here to here?
Yes, yeah, it's pretty distinct where it was, if you look on the overhead.
Basically, Google Earth.
Yep. Yeah, I went back to like the 2000, and when Padula still owned it, and that was still all field out through there. It was pretty distinct where it was running through there.
So they reduced the ability for it to drain, so it's expanding.
Yes. Yep, so there was an elevation that had drained across the field, and they had brought it up so that they brought the roadway across and kind of closed off that drain. So, and it may be sandy, but it's not enough to let that wetland stay at the same level that it was. Yeah, so I know when we were out there, Matt and I, one of the big things we saw in the back by where the tenant's been removed, they had cleared right up to the blue flags, the wetland markings that were back there. That was one of the big violations we had noticed. Yep, right there.
In this area?
Yeah, they weren't they right up to we could drive the pickup right up to the blue flag. So they had their vehicles parked back there, and they had the blue back there. So that was one of the areas that we did have a concern of.
If I may go to the plan, and I promise this time I won't draw on it in like black marker.
This is a nice color, Joe, you don't want to mess with.
So, if I remember correctly, this would be the commercial center, where you have everything, I believe it was right down here. You have the grass area right here. Right on.
Where it was cleared down to.
Well, that was right, we figured it was within or at the 30-foot line, the roadway going into the manufacturing area.
You had areas where, when Scott went out and redelineated, you have little blue field flags out there.
Behind the mobile.
Right, and there are areas where, going around the corner from that, where you could see, I believe actually on this property, where you could see that it had gone out to the flag.
What went up to the flag?
The limit of clearing went up to the flag.
This window, I mean, you see the edge of paving.
Right, but it looks like what had happened was, there was clearing that was done, and then the wetland expanded up there. And then when he went out and redelineated, of course, the wetland has changed.
Because this is this edge of pavement limit, which is this line right here. Little jet here. This is the exact edge of pavement that was approved as part of 2011 plan set. So that's what I'm saying, between 2011 and this one, the wetland has expanded that much where, this wasn't approved impact before. This wasn't done additionally since 2011. Back here, I can't speak for that.
Yep, now that, like I said, that was right up to the edge of wet in the back. I know when we drove around the side, it looked variable in through there, but there was a direct.
And I understand he's now the owner. This wasn't Powell cleared, this was previous owner.
It looked pretty recent, the disturbance that was there.
But they just purchased this one
Okay,
within the last year.
okay.
So if there was, Mr. Chairman, you indicated that it appeared there was some sort of hydraulic connection between the upper wetlands and lower portions of the property or the adjacent property. Is there any thought to reestablishing that connection? No piping from that upper wetland?
We haven't thought about it, considered it.
And that would be something that if they were interested in doing it. I mean, the wetlands only, at least at this point, it's expanding. It could continue to expand and become more of a problem.
Yeah.
So, it's something that they may want to undertake at some point, trying to put that hydrology back together, the connection.
Well, and this is a site that's so sensitive because it's so, there's so much industrial activity going on. It'd be one where, personally, I'd like to see us, maybe expand that no disturbance zone on portions of the site from the 30 to the 50.
If not, it's gonna grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that we would have to take a walk out to just get a good idea of where they are in relationship to it and what they can do to remediate, but have enough location to move the business elsewhere, if that was the commission's choice. I mean, I don't know, has everybody been out to the site and seen it in the back?
I haven't been all the way out.
No.
Okay, on the store piece of property.
Yeah.
Except the bikes will do that.
I mean, that might be worth it if those that haven't seen it in the back.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see it before we go expanding any of the no-touch zones. It's definitely an idea worth exploring. But the thing we also have to keep cognizant of, there's a lot of activity that was out there or could be proposed that's actually out of the buffer zone. You know, the stone storage areas, for example, are out of the buffer zone that you highlighted. So we need to see exactly what you're planning under an NOI. And then, I mean, we can revisit that idea. But it looks like you've got some area that you've got some wiggle room out there because of the non-jurisdictional areas where we can come up with something pretty creative. And you may want to look at that idea of actually doing a reconnection to prevent that wetland from continuing to expand. Because the thing is, and the reason why I say that is because suppose for some reason the commission does decide to expand the 50-foot zone. If the wetland starts expanding, so does that 50-foot zone. So it winds up, you wind up actually getting penalized for it in the future because it expands.
Is there a point though where, if we permit the work, our limits established, and we have an edge of pavement or whatever disturbance set up, and if the wetland creeps?
That's, again, and that's why I raise this issue, because we gotta bring it up, because otherwise it's gonna wind up, if you don't do anything and the wetland expands, it's gonna wind up being an ever-evolving issue, and that's something you wanna take care of now once, instead of having to continue coming back to the table, which is something I always encourage applicants. Whatever you're gonna do, try to get it done in one filing, have your parameters spelled out, so you don't have to keep coming back to the table to refine stuff.
And I mean, technically, your work is not supposed to have any effects on the wetlands that are on site. So by eliminating that means of drainage, you are affecting the wetlands. So in them expanding, it's changing the whole ecosystem in that area. So I mean, it really is supposed to maintain itself once you've developed around it. So I mean, it is an issue that you should probably just think about, because it will, I mean, in my estimation, it has grown, it will continue to grow, unless we come up with some way to keep it at whatever its natural elevation was.
And there could be some very simple ways to accomplish that too. So we don't know. Until we put some elbow grease on it, we won't know.
And the only other thing too is it looks like you have riverfront on 133 as well.
It's from here over this piece here, part of the 200 foot.
Okay. And just going back, I thought the riverfront would extend all the way to the street. You have it stopping there at the...
So this was discussed with your office too. The way the riverfront area was established was perpendicular to the culvert crossing the street.
Yeah.
And these lines are exactly as it was in the previously approved law.
Okay.
I copied them all the same way it's been discussed and kind of reviewed.
Yeah.
Yeah, no issue.
Okay. And again, the only reason I ask is because I believe Denise Child had sent us an email saying that the crossing was less than 200 feet, so the riverfront continues from one side to the other.
Actually, that was Megan that did that.
Megan, yep. But you got the same email. Yeah. So the riverfront is supposed to be continuous from the south side of Leominster Shirley to the north side, because the culvert's less than 200 feet.
And did you say that you discussed it in the office? Was that during your enforcement conference?
It was all through that document. Also, it was an enforcement conference or on the phone and on site. I forget what it was, but I know we were sitting down with them with the plan. Why and how it's calculated and how it's drawn. And she agreed to it. So we can
Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to catch up, we're going a lot faster than I can comprehend. So what we're saying here is that the map that was presented is not accurate?
Again, the riverfront, that's the way I read that, and I believe she had sent the exact regulation from that, CMR 310. That the culvert was less than 200 feet, the riverfront extended, continued from the south side of the road to the north side. It didn't end and then restart.
If you have that,
Yeah.
you see it, I don't call it.
Yeah, because that would cause a redraw and rethinking how we're addressing this.
Okay, so, section 310, CMR 1058 2A3, when a river runs through a culvert more than 200 feet in length, the riverfront area stops at the perpendicular line. So this culvert is less than 200 feet, so the riverfront does not stop. Based on GIS, it appears a culvert under Leominster Shirley is 75 feet in length. In this case, there would be no break in the riverfront caused by the road culvert crossing.
Well, that would just bring the riverfront to the road, wouldn't it?
Well, the riverfront would, but he has it stopping on a perpendicular line.
Down to the street.
Right,
That's what I'm saying, it would bring it to the road.
correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so we got 5 minutes.
Okay. Just because I know we were right on the line on 181 with riverfront disturbance. And I know there's been give and take in, you've added grass area, you've taken away buildings, but then you've added buildings and added asphalt, so it may balance out, I don't know. But it just needs to be addressed. So at this point, you're gonna meet with the clients and just kind of go over to see exactly what they're looking to do.
So like Matt said, include everything now once.
Yep.
So what we're gonna do, we'll add this plan.
Okay.
And come back to the line.
All right. And is anybody interested in the pre-development conditions, or should he bring any information on that, or just what they're looking to do?
Pre-development prior to this meeting?
Yes, prior to 2011, when they did all of this.
Just, some aerial photos that show the expansion of the wetland would be great.
Okay. All right. Then you anticipate 30 days?
No, definitely more than that.
Okay.
I can't remember right now. I could probably start this. I mean, I'm not putting on the back burner. I'll meet with Steve now.
Okay.
Next week.
Mhm.
We'll go through, we'll try to get a game plan, stuff from it. I'd say probably June.
Okay, so for our second meeting in June,
We can do it later in June meeting.
so that'll be 60 days roughly.
Sounds reasonable.
Okay. All right, so we'll expect something then on whatever the second meeting in June is, Matt.
Yep, that would be, gosh, too many security things I have to go through.
Be June 19th? Second meeting in June?
Yep. So if you have something to present then.
Yeah,
And
it is
hopefully
the
we can go out on site the Saturday before and take a quick look.
So are you looking to have an NOI file for the 19th? Or are we looking to have a hearing scheduled for the 19th? Because if the hearing is scheduled for the 19th, I'm going to need the materials in by the 4th. So, I mean, if you want to have the materials in for the 19th, unless you want to advertise in the Lowell Sun, I can give you an extra week because they can do a legal ad immediately, but you're going to have to I'm going to have to give you the ad and you're going to have to put it in.
Well,
So let's
I mean,
go to the
there's a chance
first.
I'll have it before then.
Let's plan on our hearing for the NOI the first meeting of July.
Well, that would be the 18th, because the first meeting would be on the 4th, so we only have one meeting in July.
Well, there you go, now you just got yourself a whole extra month. There should be no excuses at that point. Okay. Okay.
I mean, unless you really want to have a patriotic style meeting.
We're gonna hope you.
All right, moving forward. Anything on Emerald Place Beach, Matt?
No, I'm actually going to be, starting in May, inspecting those weekly. I have a,
And you'll put Shady Point on that list as well?
well, Shady Point, I have to meet with him. I'm going to schedule a meeting with him within the next week. He just got back, so I have other issues I need to discuss with him,
Okay.
aside from his beach, so.
All right, moving forward, LSIC. So we had left it with one statement to review and add that Carl had submitted on the third-party testing.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I took just to help us move along, everything we talked about at the last meeting, and then, as you mentioned, the only open item was we had the recommendation of a 5-year potential peer review. We had drafted some language, ran it by Richard and Matt, and that's what's in here now. So hopefully this is very close.
Oh, Matt's leaving, and Katie's got one.
Is the Lake Shirley binder, if you have to refer to the previous order of conditions and any other materials that were submitted. So it's in here.
So item 6, I'm gonna just give it a quick read. Every 5 years, the LCC will contract at the applicant's expense a qualified third-party peer review lake specialist to perform an independent survey of the conditions of Lake Shirley regarding vegetation and water quality. They will also do a review of the lake management plan, all reports, data provided to Conservation Commission, and actions taken by the applicant over the prior period. Based on this, the peer reviewer will produce a report of their findings, conclusions, any recommendations for review by the applicant and LCC. The frequency and/or scope of the peer reviews may be increased at any time by the LCC if there are specific concerns identified that could affect the health and sustainability of the resource area. Is that kind of what you had in mind?
Yeah, I like everything. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the last sentence, Carl, that we can just increase the frequency of peer review at any time if there are concerns. But everything, I'm not saying I disagree, I'm just digesting it now. But everything prior to that, I agree with.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, it's almost redundant with the statement in the back that we can pretty much change the order of conditions whenever we want.
Right.
But I think it's just for,
Right.
because the reason this grew from, a couple pages to 5 was to just try to make everything really clear so that there was no misunderstandings or misinterpretations. So I certainly don't feel strong one way or the other about that last sentence because it is covered elsewhere.
Do you have a key to lock the door?
I don't. No.
I'll give it.
And it locks the same as,
Yeah, it's just the door handle
okay.
itself that you lock.
So we'll just remove that last statement, or last sentence. Anybody have any questions on that?
There's another copy of this thing.
Do you want a copy of it, Joanne?
No.
Yeah, it's just that one statement. Everything else is the same as Matt had sent out. What's that?
I don't understand what we're doing.
Okay. We had approved everything, we just had Todd.
Right, the DEP, Jane Pierce said what we're doing was incorrect.
Okay.
That was what we talked about last meeting.
Yeah.
And we were asking for an extension on the existing order of conditions for September 30th.
Yeah.
And at that time, over the summer, Dominic is going to apply for an NOI.
Okay.
And we will be starting, then you can encompass all of this into that new NOI.
Okay. So at this point, based on the order conditions, we can change and update it at any time. So we're just gonna finish with our review and the update of it, and then we can go over the extension.
No, we don't accept, I don't accept the extension. I don't accept the new conditions.
So you're withdrawing, you don't want us to extend it past what would, how far?
No, the new 7
It's
pages that we
extended
created.
currently till June 6th.
June 6th.
And she has that extension permit. She has put in another timely request, which is in the binder,
Yeah.
to extend to September 30th.
Okay.
And what she, apparently from what I'm understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you're disputing the validity of being able to change this order of conditions currently. And what you're saying is, do the extension to September 30th, Dominic will file a new NOI over the summer, and over the summer with the new NOI, you'd be willing to revisit this. Is
So
that
that
my
you can
understanding?
put, use the conservation in an NOI, can put whatever you want, and then we either appeal it, or what you're doing allows the applicant no appeal process, which you cannot do.
Okay, so that's what she's disputing the validity of the action that you're doing.
Okay.
But what she's also, what I'm understanding, and again, Joanna, correct me if I'm wrong, is that she is saying that if you approve an extension to September 20th, that Dominic will submit an NOI. Would you expect him to submit it? I know I just distributed the updated lake management plan that he sent out. So I'm assuming he's gonna base his NOI off that.
Yes.
So when would we expect to see something from him?
Well, as soon as.
June,
Probably
May?
June.
Okay, well then in the early part of the summer, he would file the notice of intent.
Yeah.
And what she's saying is she would be willing to revisit these orders then, and if she doesn't agree with them, she would simply appeal the order.
But what you're doing now creates that the applicant doesn't have an appeal process. And the paperwork that we signed and said that we would be accountable for with the registry of deeds and is on file is what we said we'd be accountable for. Adding 7 pages to an existing order of conditions is something that can't be done unless we, the applicant, asks for the amendment of an existing order of conditions.
Okay, and again, I guess we disagreed because in the order of conditions that you agreed to, it states that we can update them at any time.
No, what you're doing is what, I've gone back with, I've pulled everything you've created to DEP.
Okay. Have we received anything from DEP on this?
As far as anything in writing?
Yeah.
No, I haven't received anything in writing, no.
Okay. So no direction, no opinion?
At this point, no, I haven't received anything in writing.
Okay, so we have
But
nothing.
it's something that, the problem is that you've got bylaw versus state act. So the boilerplate that was written was based on your bylaw. And there was that condition that basically says you can change the order of conditions.
Yeah.
So that's what you have to weigh, whether it's bylaw, state law. I don't have any problem with Joanna's approach. And if you guys want to continue down the path you're doing, you may have validity under the bylaw. So you got to catch 22 here.
Yeah.
So my recommendation is that everybody agree to some type of a course. Because at this point, all we're going to be doing is spinning our wheels.
Okay. And so Joanna's talking about,
Filing an NOI
filing
for June,
Yep, but appealing it to DEP.
if she doesn't like the order of
state-
conditions, yeah.
On the state regulations, but on our bylaw, she would have to appeal it to Superior Court?
That's the technical procedure, yeah.
Okay. So, because DEP doesn't really have any jurisdiction over our bylaw.
Right, and it would depend on what DEP came out with for a superseding. You don't know. I mean, you guys may look at it and say, you know what, this is reasonable, and just adjust your order under your bylaw. That's what a lot of communities do.
Okay.
So, I mean, there are options. I mean, you gotta work out the scenario you think is gonna work best. 'Cause, I mean, she does have the right to file for a new order of conditions, and she has the right to appeal it. I mean, well, LSIC. I say she's representing LSIC.
Matt, just a point of clarification, you said nothing in writing. Has Judy communicated anything back?
I spoke to her on the phone, but I didn't get anything by email.
Yeah.
And basically, we weighed the different types of options that are out there. But, I mean, it's up to you guys how you approach it at this point.
So DEP isn't going to intervene then?
They have nothing to intervene on.
Right.
Till I appeal.
Till she appeals it. She's gonna file a new NOI. You guys are gonna have to work out an order of conditions because she has a right to file the new NOI. And again, forgive me, I say she, because you're representing. If LSIC doesn't like what's issued for an order, they have rights of appeal. And then there's the bylaw provision, which is a Superior Court filing, unless, again, with what DEP issues, the commission decides, you know what, it's a fair order, we're fine with it, and then just do a revote under your bylaw. No, I have to.
I mean, this thing just keeps, it's the never-ending story. And I think we need to deal with what we have today. And if an extension or a new order, and this notice of intent is filed, then it's filed and we react to it. But I don't think we should be waiting for something to happen in the future. I think we're on a course to improve the order conditions, make it clearer, make it more understandable. And I think we should proceed on that course. If the applicant chooses to go file a new notice of intent, then fine, we react to that. But reacting to something somebody may or may not do in the future and delaying, all this work we put into making things better and clearer, I don't think makes sense. Even if we only did it under the bylaw, I have no reason to believe today that the order conditions would be much different in June or July than it is today. So why don't we just proceed on the path we're on? If we're worried about DEP, we can do it under the bylaw, but I would be anxious to see DEP's impression of this, order condition, because I don't think it's so burdensome by a long shot when you look at the GEIR. I think if anything, it might come up short.
Yeah. No, I agree at this point, moving forward with the course that we've put in place. I mean, you're more than welcome to file a new NOI and request a new order of conditions at that
But I lost the
time.
whole summer season. You set Lake Shirley up for failure, because now we lose the whole summer season, because there's no way you're gonna have an order of conditions ready for me to treat Lake Shirley in July. We've been
right.
trying to do an extension since
It's right here, we're going to approve it tonight.
September.
But it's right, we're going to approve what we've done tonight. We're going to discuss, I'm sorry, we are going to discuss what we have in front of us to approve tonight. We're going to discuss your extension request to the 30th of September tonight, and then you can move forward with your planned maintenance of Lake Shirley.
Under your new 7-page order,
Yeah,
not the 2.
well, you read through it, I mean, what were you that concerned with?
Everything. I'm not even gonna start to have conversation, because we never get past drawdown.
Okay. Well, that-
I was instructed to ask for an extension of the existing order of conditions. Back in September, that's what the applicant did.
Yeah.
The DEP came to our meeting in December, and the board had decided, per her instructions, to appeal this process.
Okay.
I did not understand, I could not appeal once you give me the new extension that you created. I did not understand that that's not appealable. And that's why Judy has continuously said the word extension is what's key. We're asking to extend our existing order of conditions, not a new 7-page document. What is signed at the Registry of Deeds, what we signed up to do is the 2-page document that we're asking you to extend that existing order of conditions. That's not what has been done here. I, as the applicant, and I have it in writing, and I can also go to the board, because if we leave here tonight, that's where we're going, because we're not going to lose it. I'm not threatening, I'm not trying to be rude. Well, no, but I think you think I'm being condescending, I'm not. But every time Lake Shirley doesn't get treated or has an algae bloom that's not treated, it impairs it. It scars it. We don't want that to happen. So, in talking with the DEP, talking with Dominic, who does this all, because Dominic has been confused from the beginning, and I kept saying, no, it's an extension. He's like, no, it can't be an extension, because they can't change an order. So that's how we all came about this conversation, Dominic, Judy, and I all had a conversation, and she is as clear as day, is that I, as the applicant, can ask for an amended on the existing. But what the conservation's doing as a whole, you can't do without collaboratively working together. If we both sit down and say, okay, we're gonna change line, that, because then again, I, the applicant, am working with you, and then I still have to ask for an amendment to the existing order of conditions.
Okay.
As the applicant.
So I guess as I see it, we view it that in the order of conditions, the last condition you agreed to says that we can amend the order as we see fit. If we turn around and put you under this amended order or updated order, and DEP says that we can't do that, then they can contact us and at that point tell us that we can't amend the order as we have. I mean, unfortunately, as chair, I have heard zero from DEP on what we've been doing. And we've been doing this over the course of 9 months. So it's not like there hasn't been ample opportunity for somebody from DEP, with all the conversations you guys are having with them, if they see something that isn't right, I would have thought that they would have contacted us about that. So that's why I have to agree with Carl that we're going to continue to move forward on the plan that we have set. Now, there's 6 of us here. If we approve it tonight, if DEP finds a problem with what we've done and the way we've done it, they would need to contact us. And if we've done this improperly or illegally, I'm sure they'll be the first to say, you've done that illegally, you can't hold them to that. So unfortunately, we have to move forward with the course we have. We haven't been told that it's improper or incorrect by DEP. So I would suggest that if you talk to Judy tomorrow, have her put something out to Matthew saying these steps that you have taken are incorrect if we do indeed approve this tonight. I mean, do you see it from our eyes as, my eyes as well? Okay. Again, unfortunately.
I think it's the applicant's responsibility to call Judy to say, well, they don't agree with what you say, Judy, so why don't you call them and set them straight? Because Judy needs paperwork to an appeal process to be able to get involved. So there's nothing for Judy to get involved with yet. I would think the consultant would be on the phone saying, hey, my applicant's saying blah, blah. Are you really coaching the people to say blah, blah?
Matt was right here and told Judy.
And he told you what Judy said. And he agrees with what Judy told me to do, which is September 30th. Ask for an extension until September 30th of your existing, so you don't lose your summer season, and then file a new NOI, and then you have something, if you, as an applicant, don't agree with, that you can appeal. And that's what Matt just told you Judy said to him. That's what Judy said to me as an applicant. But if you want to
I
tell
guess
me
I didn't hear
wrong-
Matt tell us that we shouldn't update the order of conditions and approve it. I didn't hear that from Matt. I mean, Matt said that was our
I
decision.
heard the opposite. I heard Matt say that you clearly can do it under the bylaw.
Well, if you follow your bylaw, is what he said, not the state regulation.
Right.
Yeah, but
Right.
you require both from us.
Oh, it's-
And he also said you're well within your rights to file it for a new NOI.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I think the process is clear, and if we approve this tonight, then you certainly can take that to DEP, and maybe that motivates her to formally contact us. If it's illegal, I think you said it was illegal for us to do that. So I would think she could react to something that she believes is illegal without us going to her or anyone going to her. So I think going through with this process helps you as much. You can certainly do what you need to do in the summer per this order condition. There's nothing significantly different from what you're doing now to get to where you need to be in the summer. And it will perhaps drive the process that you're talking about with DEP. So I don't see any downside to just moving forward.
Katie, any? Just a question, Mr. Chairman. If we go ahead and move with this, and then it's appeal, and it goes to the Supreme Court, State Supreme Court,
Superior.
it's a long period of time before they even hear it, right?
I
So what do we
honestly have
use
never
in
been
the-
through the process. I
Yeah,
have
so
no
what do
idea.
we use in the meantime? Our own original document, and then they come back and tell us, no, you can't do that, but that could take years.
I myself would certainly put substantial weight on the recommendations from DEP.
Oh, yeah.
So if we decide to approve this tonight,
And Judy comes back and says, no, you can't do
I'm
it.
sure Joanna will give Judy a copy,
Yeah,
and then we can hear back. But unfortunately, without any direction from DEP, I have no reason to change at least my course of action.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has a voice here.
and we're maintaining a precedence from the prior document in which the statement was saying that was made that we're essentially doing something illegal by doing that. So all we're really guilty of is continuing a precedent that was established.
Yeah, I don't think we're doing anything illegal.
I don't think so.
We're certainly not doing anything illegal under our bylaw, which is
Yeah.
sufficient, it stands alone and has no impact on DEP. There's also,
supersedes.
it's sort of getting the impression that there's something onerous in here. There's nothing significantly different in here than what is in the current order of conditions. There are dates, where there were no dates in the order of conditions. There's a little more specificity, so we don't get into this, what's compliant, what isn't. And so this isn't a new document. It's a better document and is, I don't believe, any more onerous than, and it doesn't put any more gates in front of doing a treatment in June or July or whenever the treatment is required.
I mean, I think it's a better document because it's much more, it's clearer.
It's clear, this is clear.
There's a lot less ambiguity and gray area, and I just think it's a lot clearer myself. So LSICs can do whatever they want, and frankly, if we approve this tonight, I think it would behoove them to go back and take a closer look at what we approved to see if they can, agree to it. If not, if they're more than willing to, they can send it to DEP and get their feedback as well.
And that's why I like, go through it, because it moves the ball forward. And if DEP will look at it. And because sitting here without feedback, I have no reason to believe it'd be any different than this with the new notice of intent. So if there are issues with it, the DEP, then we'll get to hear them formally. The sooner we do it, the sooner we'll find out if there are any big issues. So by the new notice of intent, we'll have learned something.
And there's nothing precluding us, the actions we intend out of this order would really stop them from changing any of their past behaviors. You'd still be able to treat the lake. You're still doing all this, so you're not destroying the lake, right?
Yeah, all of the algae treatments and the dates and the
All that
limits and everything all
remains
remain
relatively
the same. Matt still has the overriding authority on the algae treatment.
Right.
So if there is the possibility of a bloom, the testing regimen basically stayed the same. We changed or updated some of the locations for the testing, but the testing regimen is still the same. So I don't.
I agree.
No, at this point, I don't.
Yeah, so I wouldn't abandon the idea of being able to treat when you normally treat. It's just, the wording's a little clear.
Yeah, it doesn't preclude you from doing anything that you've been doing. So, all right, at this point, any other questions or discussion on the order of conditions with the addition of the last statement?
Nope.
Okay, I'd accept a motion to approve the order of conditions for Lake Shirley.
Second, move some.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All right, and the next is the extension to September 30th of the order of conditions.
I'm not sure we can do that, Mr. Chairman.
So you're going to allow...
I would say that, yes.
Okay. So the problem that you do have is as
The
of...
extension will run out June 6th.
Right.
Right.
But you sure you just don't want to extend it so you do
Yeah,
have the...
absolutely positive.
So at that point, all management of Lake Shirley will stop?
All management will stop.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wasn't I just saying, they're not gonna,
It is, it's a very bad shape. It's a shame, I'm taking this problem.
It's your choice.
It's my fault, yeah, it's my fault.
What's that?
So did they just withdraw?
They withdrew
The
their
oversight?
decision to extend. So at this point, their order of conditions will expire on, what was it, June 6th?
So then that goes into effect June 6th. The new one goes into effect June 6th.
Nothing goes into effect June 6th.
So they've just withdrawn
Their order
the
of conditions
oversight
will
of
expire.
the lake?
So we amended the order of conditions, so this new order of conditions is in effect until June 6th.
So help me here. LSIC has just withdrawn from the contract with the town to oversee this lake. Is that what they just did?
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
We better get a selectman and get a new LSIC real quick. Did we know they were contemplating that?
It's news to me. So at this point,
Wow.
moving forward, we had requested a member and an alternate for the land acquisition group, and the selectmen said they would not accept an alternate, so at this point, Ken Jones was the first named applicant to the land acquisition group, and you're still waiting for that, Ken?
Yep.
All right, so I'll inform Heather that you are our designee. Moving forward, new home owner notification policy.
Look at Matt, and Matt's gone. Okay, I met with Matt today. I don't know if anybody had, a chance to look at any more detail, but, yeah, good. Any inputs? Basically, I just put on tonight to get any inputs. I did meet with Matt today, and we went through it in a little bit more detail. Matter of fact, Matt jumped right on Oliver, which is where he thinks most of the work gets done, and it was pretty good. It makes it look a little simpler than I thought, but it's never as simple as you do think when you really do it. So Matt's happy with the process. Matter of fact, he already called the assessor's office, who generates the list, and already formally requested that they once a month send us the list of transfers, land transfers, so that we can start with that. He also took a look, and we talked about the information package and the format that the sample from Framingham, and he had some other things. We said, no, that one's good, so he thought that we should build on that one, not just copy it, but build on that one. So all of that is going forward, and basically we're looking for any other inputs, either on the process or anything else. And then we'll just keep kind of pushing this forward and bring things forward, so.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's a great idea. I think, the legwork you've done is awesome. I think Framingham's document looks great. I was concerned that it would be adding a ton of work to Matt's sort of caseload. I talked to him about that earlier, and he doesn't seem to think it would be. He basically described the same thing that you just said. That, he didn't think it would be that big of a deal to put it together. The only concern not even concern, but is there anything on the Framingham document that basically says, like, there's a disclaimer that says, the wetlands that are on this thing are not what might actually be in the field, that, if you do come before us for a project, you need to have an engineered drawing, and, the wetlands need to be delineated. So this isn't delineation. Basically, it's just a notice that there may be wetlands on your property.
Yeah, no, that's really, really good. So, yeah, we want to make sure that it can't be used against us.
You can't say, well, it's on here, so that's,
Well, it's
you
not on here, and I don't have wetland.
So that would be my only concern, is that, it's not a delineation, it's a notice that there could potentially be wetlands on your property.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, and I did, I think I mentioned the conservation agent Framingham. I did meet him at COLAP, and he's really, more than willing to help us with whatever they've learned and things, so we can, and that might be a good question for him, because
if they run into that, say, well,
probably,
you said that the wetland is here, but it's actually somewhere else or whatever.
Yeah, disclaimers are always good. That's good input.
And it doesn't have to be with 12 pages of legalese,
No,
but just a
no,
little blurb on the bottom with an asterisk that says, this isn't a delineation, this is just.
And Matt did express the same thing to me. He didn't think it would be much of a burden on his schedule to go through, and you're only talking 10 or 15 a month letter packets to send out, so.
I think so. I think it's probably I'm assuming it's a little more work than maybe he sees now when you go to do it, which is why I'm still trying to find places that volunteers like myself or any other commissioners could help out, because a lot of it is the mechanics turning the crank. So I would hate to have this all, fall and just add on to Matt. I think it's an opportunity, for people to contribute to and learn. I mean, I learned something today just going over that Oliver with Matt. I didn't realize how many layers you could pull up there. So I'm glad he feels that way. But I'm going to try to protect against that too and get some help, because we're kind of recommending we start off with just transfers after the fact. But in Framingham, and I think here, and Matt, we can talk to Matt today about pulling realtors into this, the realtors in the areas, so that they can start being proactive. So that when something goes on the market, they're made aware of. So you can pull a package together if they say this is going on the market and get it to them. So prospective buyers are really fully aware, it's a good idea.
Definitely.
As opposed to others. And that's what really made the biggest difference in Framingham. And at one point, the realtors were pushing for this because they were getting sued because people weren't fully aware. So hopefully this can start, kind of reactive, but become more proactive.
Mr. Chair, if I may. So I think, as the newest resident here of all of us to Lunenburg, I think this is a great idea. I originally had a background, so I lived near Lake Whalum. So I had my realtor contact Mac to make sure I was out of the 100 foot everything. But I know a lot of people don't know about this, so I think that's a great idea, sending it out to all the prospective homeowners. I think too, to cut down on our enforcement orders too, which will be very nice. And if you need help, assembling packets and stuff, I'd be very willing to help.
Great. Yeah, because we'll try this, the pamphlet we got to create, and that's where a lot of the work is. And then a quasi-form letter that we can use and then fill in information. So
yeah, for sure.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Super. All right, so we'll let you guys
So we'll
continue
proceed.
on with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no problem. I think it's a great idea. Small town forest, I don't think there's any updates at the moment. No discussions, rules, and regs.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
With regard to residents taking it upon themselves to remove trees in our zones, and they essentially contract with a professional tree removal person, I'm thinking that if we call them in and they had another, and it's kind of like he said, she said, he said it was okay, and should we bring both parties in at the same time? Because we're anticipating that the people who remove the trees are knowledgeable and in fact have made that inquiry. And I'm thinking that I don't know if they're asking. And I would think that if we took the position that if it was an enforcement order, we should be bringing the contractor in to explain to us why they took that action without a permit. Because essentially they're a party to the breaking of the laws. So why wouldn't we take up the policy that we will be inviting in the people who are cutting the trees as well as the owner?
I mean, the only downfall is we don't have any recourse. I mean, if they don't show up, what do we do? I mean, it's not like we have any authority to call them in. The landowner's the only one that we have the authority who is on the hook for the violation.
Right.
Which has always been our...
There's no possibility...
I thought in the regulations where we can fine contractors.
Yes.
In the regulations.
Does it say that?
Yeah.
I thought it did.
Okay.
I don't have it with me, but
But we can certainly ask Matt and
Yeah.
see what his recommendation is on that.
Not that I'm recommending fine them, but that might be the hook to being able to call them in.
Yeah.
just that anxiety will make sure they ask and perhaps not perform the work until they receive the approval.
Well, I think more than ask if we reach out to make them aware of our policy and that we have the ability to fine if they
That's a good start.
Violate our bylaws by working in the buffer zones. I think that would be a good first step. I think Matt has done that with at least one
The most pretty recent, I know he did, yes.
Yeah.
So I think that would be good to, maybe proactively reach out to the contractors who routinely work in the area.
Yep. Yeah, I would still question it just because it's in the regulation. I still don't know if it's necessarily enforceable. because the power of the regulation comes in under our bylaw. But there really isn't anything in there that we can hold any other party.
So we would have to take it to the town and get a vote?
That doesn't, I don't know. At this
Yeah.
point, I don't know if we could put that in our regulation. I mean, we may be able to put our regulation in that tree cutting itself needs a permit through the Conservation Commission, which it technically does anyways. But again, the landowner is the only,
It's
is the only party
part
that is.
responsible.
Right. Yeah, the buck stops there. So,
But I agree with
but it's
Todd.
certainly worth at least contacting the contractor.
Yeah.
And perhaps having them come in at the same time so that they can see what the right process is.
Invite, request them come to the hearing.
Mhm.
Well, I think legally, we can put a request they attend, or we can place restrictions on their ability to conduct business in town, can't we?
No.
No?
I don't think, again, I don't know for sure, I'm not a lawyer, but I would say no. I'm not sure we would have.
That
So
would
the only
we
thing-
wouldn't have any recourse for the party who actually did the damage. So for example, say a landowner is inadvertently working on an adjacent property and he took down, a tree or something in the wetlands on an abutter's property. The abutter would be responsible?
Unfortunately, I just don't see where we would have any legal means of recourse
So the only
against the
recourse would be
contractor.
the abutter would have to sue the offending party.
Yes.
Yeah,
Because the
that makes
abutter
sense.
would be the aggrieved party.
Mhm.
So they would have to sue for trespassing and personal property damage, and, we can't bring a party to a suit that we don't own the property of or have any interest in.
It's kind of like the enforcement order we've got on Crawford Street.
Mhm.
We filed enforcement orders on the adjacent property owners, even though they weren't party to what happened on their property.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that was the MBTA, that was a City of
Yeah,
Leominster.
City of Fitchburg, yeah.
City of
Yeah.
Fitchburg. So, no, I
Yeah,
think
no
that's
problem.
honestly the only, if you start from the statute down, that's the only party that we can attach. I don't see how anybody else working on a property,
Well, I think-
that a third party, it would be like a building permit. If you didn't have a building permit, I don't think you can turn around and sue the contractor, that the town couldn't. They would have to come through the property owner.
Yeah.
So, and the only one that I'm aware of is if there's a fine on the property, we can withhold, that the town can withhold permitting moving forward. But as far as the contractor, I don't think so. I mean, we can certainly meet with Adam Costa, he's here once a month.
Yeah.
and ask him.
Yeah, you could.
So, I'm pretty sure I had asked in the past, and he said there wasn't any way to do it. So.
I do think, and of course, how far do you go out with the tree companies, like sending letters, like, you do a 15-mile radius of all the tree companies, or like, because I mean, there are tree companies that work in town that are from Boston or whatever. But, certainly the local ones, we can send notice
Yeah.
to, the ones that do the majority of the work in town.
Yep.
Just be like, if you think you're within 100 feet of a wetland,
Ask.
you better make sure.
Yeah. But we need a little
I
bit
like
of
that.
teeth in there, and even if we just put in the bylaws or our own regulations, that's got something. We can at least cause some anxiety as to what we might intend to do. Let me go back and look at, I believe Carl's note was correct. We had put something in there.
I think it's in the regulation, but maybe Richard's point, maybe it may not be enforceable.
Just because it's in there doesn't mean it's
Right,
enforceable.
right.
But being proactive, I prefer we send
Yeah.
some
Yeah, that was a good
out.
idea. Ken had at least send them out to,
Sure.
just a notice. Todd had it.
Good ideas done this in the
Yep.
table.
Down at that end. And Katie's end isn't working so hard.
Yeah. You went by yourself down that day.
Hey, for the
all the good
record,
ideas.
on TV, I have a concussion, so for the record, not bad, but a little slow over here. Yeah.
What'd you do?
Hit my head at my house.
Oh my gosh, you're not supposed to do
It's not even
that.
that bad, but I still getting headaches, but
Good.
it's a little slow over here.
Yep, Matt's not helping us hold up our end of the table. All right.
Here it is, right there. Yeah. Under, what paragraph is this? Enforcement actions and fines. person subject to fines, violation, and enforcement orders may include property owners and contractors and other agents of such property owner.
Yeah, we can
It's
ask
the
the
regulation,
cost of it.
So I think we send out the regulations, say, we can be pulling you
Yeah, we
in.
send the regulation, yeah.
Yeah, send the regulation out and say,
Sure.
understand, you're
Yeah.
now
Yep.
liable.
That's probably the best use of that regulation. A letter.
All right, moving forward, has everybody had a chance to review the minutes of March 20th?
Yeah?
All right. I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes of March 20th.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. All those, any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Committee reports? No.
Okay.
Agent is not here, so we can't have an agent's report. I do have a copy of a plan for Arrow Estates. I don't know if anybody got the email from the planning board, that they're meeting on April 28th. It was remanded back from, it was a project that was approved by the Conservation Commission 10 years ago.
Yeah, we walked
And I
it.
believe it was denied by the planning board. Went to court, now it's been remanded back to the planning board with changes. But there are wetlands and wetland crossings and things like that, and their order has expired, so I don't see any reason why they won't be applying through us for that work.
Are those copies of it?
No. No, unfortunately, it was a gray area and it didn't get submitted as all of site plan reviews are, and every board and commission gets copies. So this was a borrowed copy that has to go back to the planning board in the morning if anybody was interested.
It's a copy.
That's a copy, yes. Yeah, there was 10 sections of it. Feel free to come through.
We did, we walked through this a long time ago. Yeah.
Well, 10 years ago, the headwater to Mulpus Brook is up at the top. No, he
We
wasn't
didn't
on.
walk that one?
No, that was 2009, that was before.
This is up behind Walmart, right?
No.
No,
this
no.
is
Howard Street.
This is
Howard
Howard
Street.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, you're thinking Highfield.
5 years.
Yeah, this was further back than that, so.
Yeah, you're right.
But it did, up at the top there, there's a pond that does start Mulpus Brook down through there, so.
Yeah, headwaters and Mulpus.
Yeah, and if you go on like, Oliver, you can see all of the roads. They had gone through and cut all the roads in prior to getting all their permits.
Oh, really?
So you can see the layout of it, so. There are changes, I'm not sure exactly what they are, I haven't had a chance to review it, so. All right, any public comment from the public? Any public comment from the commission?
Wait till Jenny sees us in the hot tub.
Seeing none, I'll accept the motion to
I move we adjourn.
adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
We have to put the chairs back, Matt,
Good
just to tell you.
Are you off the